Chapter 2762. After the bath water was ready, Fengjiu went to take a bath in the cubicle. Not long after, she changed into a red dress and wiped the water stains on her hair. She took a green hairpin and tied up a strand of hair. The rest was casually let down behind her. The simple makeup made her look casual and lazy. "Master, the little master is awake," Ling Shuang said as he stood by the bed and looked at the little fellow who had woken up and was rolling on the bed. "He's awake, let me hold him," Fengjiu said as she came to the bed in the inner room. She looked at the little fellow who was kicking his feet and waving his little hands on the bed. Suddenly, she caught a glimpse of the rattle drum at the head of the bed and couldn't help but smile. "You bought it for him?" "No, the Yama Lord bought it for the little master when he came back today," Ling Shuang said, then said, "When the Yama Lord came back, he asked me to carry the little master to the hall. He held the little master and played in the hall for a while, then fed the little master some food. He didn't let me carry him back until the little master fell asleep." Fengjiu was slightly surprised when she heard this. She asked with a smile, "He knows how to play with children. He actually bought a rattle drum for little Hao, Master, the Yama Lord treats the little master very well," Ling Shuang said. Hearing this, Fengjiu chuckled. She played with the little fellow on the bed and said, "This is our first child after all. How can it not be good? Little Hao, don't you think so?" He that the child danced and giggled. His chubby little face smiled and his eyes curved into crescent moons. That little appearance was very adorable. Fengjiu couldn't help but lean forward and kiss his white and tender little face. Come, let mother give you a kiss," she said with a smile. She picked up the child and kissed him heavily on the cheek. With a pop, the little guy was stunned for a moment. Then, he suddenly burst into tears. Fengjiu was startled. She looked at the little guy who had suddenly burst into tears and couldn't help but be stunned. After a while, she recovered and said with amusement, "Little thing, I'm your mother. What's wrong with your mother kissing you? Was it too much? You actually despise it? Are you still going to cry for me to see?" That the child's cries were extremely loud, especially in the darkness of the night. Even the other courtyards could faintly hear it. Xianyuan Mose, who was handling affairs in the study, paused for a moment when he heard the child's cries. He put down the things in his hands, got up, and walked out. "Master." Hui Lang, who was guarding outside the door, greeted him. "Tell the kitchen to prepare some food for Hao, I'll go see if he's hungry," Xianyuan Mose said as he walked out. At the same time, Yun Shuexin, who had heard the child's cries, also went out. She went to the kitchen first and personally brought a bowl of rice paste to the Ling Shuang's courtyard. On the way, she met Xianyuan Mose. She smiled and called out, "Senior." Xianyuan Mose stopped and glanced at her. His gaze fell on the things in her hands. Seeing his gaze, Yun Shuexin said, "I heard the child crying. I thought he might be hungry, so I went to the kitchen to bring a bowl of rice paste to the Ling Shuang and let her feed the child. The servants will do these things. You don't have to do this," Xianyuan Mose said. Chapter 2763. As she spoke, she curtsied slightly. "Senior brother, I'll go first." As she spoke, she did not wait for him. Instead, she went to Ling Shuang's courtyard. When Xianyuan Mose saw this, he also strode forward. In Ling Shuang's courtyard, the little fellow had stopped crying. Fengjiu had picked him up and was playing with him with a rattledrum. She saw the little thing blinking its black eyes at her. Those eyes were still filled with tears, and its watery appearance made it look like a little deer looking at her. Seeing this, her heart softened. "You're not crying anymore. You can't be so petty." She gently pinched his nose and said, "Other girls can't kiss randomly, but mother can kiss you. Do you understand?" yeah, he. The little fellow opened his small mouth and called out, ah ah. Suddenly, he began to giggle, making Fengjiu smile as well. However, not long after, the smile on her face disappeared and she looked outside. Master, what's wrong? Leng Shuang asked. Someone is here, Fengjiu said. Go out and send them away. She sat by the bed with the child in her arms. Yes. Leng Shuang responded and walked out, closing the door on his way out. When she came outside, she saw a white figure walk in. I heard the child crying. I thought he might be hungry, so I brought a bowl of rice paste over. As Yun Shuexin spoke, she looked at the tightly shut door behind Leng Shuang and asked, Is the child in the room? I just fed the little master. Miss Yun, please take back the rice paste. Leng Shuang said. He looked at the person behind him and his heart skipped a beat. The Yama Lord was also here. Master was still in the room. Would the Yama Lord notice? Master said to send people away. Among them, did the Yama Lord include? Where's the child? Xianyuan Mose asked. When he heard no movement in the room, Leng Shuang said, He's in the room. He just fell asleep. When Xianyuan Mose heard this, he looked at Yun Shuexin and said, Since he's asleep, you can go back first. Okay, senior brother. I'll take my leave first, she said softly. After bowing slightly, she walked out. After she left, Xianyuan Mose wanted to go into the room to take a look. However, he heard Leng Shuang's voice, and he stopped in his tracks. Yama Lord, it's getting late, I'm going to accompany the little master. When he heard this, Xianyuan Mose turned around and glanced at her. He saw that her expression was normal, but she was looking down at the floor with a respectful expression. Thinking that it was indeed getting late, he said, That's fine too. Let him sleep. If he's hungry, have the kitchen send some food over. He said this and glanced at the tightly shut door. Only then did he walk out with his hands behind his back. However, just as he was about to leave the courtyard, he suddenly heard the sound of the child giggling. He couldn't help but stop in his tracks. He turned around to look at the room, then at Leng Shuang. When he saw that she was also looking at him, he instinctively reacted in that instant, and his heart skipped a beat. Leng Shuang was nervous. Why was she nervous? Could it be that aside from the child, there was someone else in the room? In the phone manner, who would be able to sneak in like this? And Leng Shuang was still protecting her. In an instant, all sorts of thoughts flashed through his mind. His footsteps, which had originally been heading out, now followed him into the courtyard. Chapter 2764. Is the child alone inside? Xianyuan Mose asked. He didn't stop walking. Instead, he walked past Leng Shuang and headed for the closed door. Leng Shuang followed behind him without saying a word. She watched anxiously as he pushed the door open. When he stepped in, she couldn't help but walk in as well. She thought she would see her master, but she didn't expect to see only her little master rolling around on the bed and playing with a rattledrum in his hand. She couldn't help but sigh in relief when she didn't see her master, but she was also a little surprised. Wasn't her master going to see the Yama Lord? Why was he hiding? Where could her master hide in a place like this? She gathered her thoughts and took a deep breath. Then, she stepped forward and asked, Yama Lord, what's wrong? Xianyuan Mose looked at the little guy playing on the bed. He didn't see anyone else in the room. His eyes swept across the room and landed on Leng Shuang. Your master is back. Leng Shuang looked up in surprise. Master is back. The Yama Lord found out. She looked at him and suppressed the guilt in her heart. She said, I don't know. Xianyuan Mose paused for a moment. Then, he walked out. Take good care of the child. Leng Shuang saw him out. After watching him leave the courtyard, she sighed and walked back into the room. However, when she saw her master sitting by the bed in the room, she couldn't help but be surprised. She asked, "Master, don't you want the Yama Lord to know that you're back?" "I just don't want Yun Shueshin to know that I'm back." Fengjiu sat by the bed and played with the child. He said, "That woman doesn't look easy. I still don't know where she came from. She's already living in my house." Hearing this, Ling Shuang couldn't help but smile. "The Yama Lord misses our master." Fengjiu chuckled. "I know. I miss him too. That's why I came back secretly. In fact, I'm worried that I'll attract the attention of those people and implicate you." She sighed. "With my current strength, I'm not afraid of them. However, if you go against them, you'll definitely lose." "Master, don't worry. We've improved our strength during this time." Ling Shuang looked at her and said, "Moreover, whether it is the Heavenly Dan building or the mansion, we have strengthened our vigilance. Master need not be too worried. You should rest first. I'll go to the kitchen to cook something for him." Feng Jiu said. She got up and walked out, preparing to go to the kitchen to cook something for him. After Ling Shuang sent her out of the courtyard, he returned to his room. There weren't many servants in the Feng manor, and they were all trained. They couldn't be compared to ordinary people. When they saw Fengjiu appear, they all bowed and left. After Fengjiu left, the hidden guards in the dark came out and told them to keep their mouths shut and not mention their master's return. Even if someone asked, they couldn't say anything. Therefore, when they went to the kitchen, they didn't attract the attention of Xianyuan Mo's courtyard. In the side room, Fengjiu personally cooked 2 bowls of noodles. She added eggs, vegetables, meat, and other things and covered them with something. Only then did she carry the 2 bowls of noodles to her courtyard. Because she knew that when she wasn't in the manor, Mo's had been living in her courtyard. Chapter 2765. As Fengjiu spoke, she thought for a moment and said, "Seal his spiritual aura and find someone to secretly watch him." The hidden guard was stunned for a moment when he heard this, then responded, "Yes." Immediately after, a few people went into the courtyard. Not long after, there was a muffled groan and Hui Lang was carried out in a cloth bag. When Ying Yi followed behind and saw that it was Fengjiu, he couldn't help but be slightly surprised. He immediately went forward and bowed. "Ghost Doctor." He looked at Hui Lang who was being carried out and thought to himself, could it be that when did Hui Lang offend the Ghost Doctor again? Fengjiu responded and walked inside, saying, "Don't let that person in the west courtyard know that I'm back." Ying Yi looked up when he heard this and saw that she had already entered the courtyard with something. That person in the west courtyard? Was she referring to Yun Shueshin? The Ghost Doctor, when did she come back? She actually knew that someone was living in the west courtyard. Fengjiu entered the courtyard and saw that the lights were on in the room. She pushed the door open and walked in. She saw Moze sitting at the table, pretending to read a book. When he heard the door open, he didn't look up and only flipped through the book and looked at the next page. Seeing this, she pursed her lips and smiled. "I haven't seen you reading in a long time. I didn't think that you'd be practicing this trick again." Hearing this, Xianyuan Mo's froze. He looked at the book in his hand, then put it down and pushed it to the side. He looked at the person who walked in with something. "Didn't you want to hide? Why did you come to my place again?" His voice was low and magnetic. If you listened carefully, you could hear a hint of bitterness in his voice. Fengjiu couldn't help but laugh. "It's not like I'm hiding from you on purpose. I just thought that I haven't cooked in a long time and wanted to go to the kitchen to make you a bowl of noodles before coming back." As she spoke, she walked over with 2 bowls of noodles and placed them on the table. She placed a bowl in front of him. "Try it. It's specially made." Xianyuan Mo's looked at her and asked, "That beggar today was you? Because I didn't recognize you, you don't recognize me? Are you planning to hide from me?" Fengjiu heard this and laughed. How is that possible? I'm not hiding from you. I'm here now, aren't I? Moreover, I didn't do anything wrong, why would I hide from you? Seeing that he kept staring at her, as if he didn't give her a good explanation, she didn't want to eat. She sighed helplessly, she sat properly and sitting, she said, actually, I came back today, I came back today. I only came back today. I used the Aurora teleportation scroll that the old man gave me to come back. However, I was worried that those people would know that I was back. They would target me and implicate you, so I had to sneak back. As she spoke, she saw his gloomy face relax. She then continued, I also missed you, so I wanted to come back to see you. But who knew that when I came back, I saw you sitting in a restaurant with a woman. When you saw me, you didn't recognize me. For a moment, I was a little jealous, so I wanted to figure out the woman's background before coming back. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mo's expression relaxed. He looked at her and sighed helplessly. Even if you were jealous, you can't hide from me. Don't you know that I've been waiting for you to come back? Chapter 2766. Hearing this, he couldn't help but feel his heart ache. He asked, did those people chase after you along the way? How was your journey to Penglai Immortal Island? Why didn't you send any news back? I did. They chased me all the way to Penglai Immortal Island. Those people aren't easy to deal with, but it won't be that easy for them to deal with me. I just didn't want you to worry, so I didn't send any news. Your strength has increased. Xianyuan Mo looked at her and asked. He felt that her aura was very different. She must have entered the heavenly god realm. She smiled and nodded. Yes, I think I'm already a heavenly god realm cultivator. Whether it's my strength or my state of mind, both have increased. Moreover, I unexpectedly obtained the Golden Lotus. Could it be that Tianji Elder wanted me to go to Penglai Immortal Island for the Golden Lotus? Did you go up the Immortal Ascension stairs? I went up, but I didn't go over. I heard that it's a door to another world. After I went up, I came back down. That's why I obtained the Golden Lotus there and my strength increased. After shaking off those people who were following me, I secretly came back. As she spoke, she smiled. Speaking of which, I still need to ask Emo Chen about the Golden Lotus. As she spoke, she took out a lotus seed from her space. I broke through after eating this lotus seed. This lotus seed is very effective. Try one and see. I just entered the heavenly god realm overseas not long ago. It's not suitable for me to break through now. Xianyuan Mo said and pushed it back. Keep it. Seeing this, Fengjiu used a small bottle to keep the lotus seed and passed it to him. Keep it then. You can use it in the future. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mo kept the lotus seed. He looked at the noodles in front of him and said, eat it. Don't let it get cold. As he spoke, he picked up the eggs and meat on the bowl and gave them to Fengjiu. Eat more. Fengjiu looked at the bowl full of meat and couldn't help but be stunned. He said, I also have some. Eat more, you've lost weight, Xianyuan Mo said as he gave Fengjiu all the meat in his bowl. Then this egg is for you. She gave him the egg and said, all right, don't take any more. Hurry up and eat. I still have something to tell you later. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mo also started eating. It was an ordinary bowl of noodles, but he felt that it was the most delicious thing he had eaten in a while. This was not only because this bowl of noodles was made by her, but also because she was by his side. After the couple finished eating, they pushed their bowls to the side. Xianyuan Mo looked at her and asked, what do you want to say? Actually, it's like this. I have an idea that I want to tell you. As she spoke, she looked at him and said, those people want the green lotus in my body, but they've always been in the dark. Meanwhile, we're in the open. Even now, we still don't know who the mastermind is. So I want to find an opportunity to blend in with them. This way, it'll be easier to investigate and eliminate. Before she could finish, he interrupted her. No. Xianyuan Mose frowned and looked at her. This is too dangerous. I don't agree. Seeing this, Fengjiu said, but if we don't do this, it'll be more dangerous if we leave them alone. Chapter 2767. Hearing this, Fengjiu said helplessly, even so, if we don't find out who is behind this, we won't be at ease. Then you plan to stay here quietly? Don't talk about me. What's the matter with your junior sister? How long is she going to stay here? Fengjiu raised her eyebrows and asked, her eyes falling on him. She didn't say, and I didn't ask. Xianyuan Mose said. She crossed her arms and took a step back, saying, where did your junior sister come from? Where is her family? Is she engaged? What is she doing here? Don't you think you should explain to me? Her family is overseas. When I went overseas with my master, I visited her family. As for whether she is engaged or not, I don't know. She just said that she wanted to come here to see, and then asked me to take care of her. That's why she is staying here. Seeing her jealous look, Xianyuan Mose's eyes flashed with a smile, don't worry. She is a person who knows her limits. Is that so? Fengjiu looked at him meaningfully. Originally, she didn't want to let Yun Shuexin know about her return. But now, as the master of the house, if she kept hiding, wouldn't she seem worse than a guest? She wanted to see if Yun Shuexin was really a person who knew her limits as Mose said. Hearing her words and seeing her expression, Xianyuan Mose couldn't help but say, she is my junior sister, and also a guest. Don't mess around with her. Hearing this, Fengjiu glanced at him and said in a sour tone, you're worried? I didn't know you knew how to protect flowers. Xianyuan Mose smiled helplessly, don't think too much. I promised to take care of her. Of course, he knew that if she targeted someone, no one would have a good life. But Yun Shuexin was not just anyone, and he couldn't let her do whatever she wanted. Fengjiu smiled and stood up. Just as he was about to speak, he heard Ying Yi's voice from the courtyard outside. Master. In the room, Xianyuan Mose glanced outside and said, come in. Ying Yi pushed the door open and came in with something in his hand. When he saw Fengjiu also looking at him, he hesitated for a moment before stepping forward and putting down the thing. Miss Yun sent someone to send pastries over. Xianyuan Mose looked at the small plate of pastries on the table and said to Fengjiu, these are pastries from your favorite pastry shop. Have a taste. He reached out and pushed the plate in front of Fengjiu. Fengjiu patted her dress and said, I just ate noodles, so I can't eat the snacks. Why don't you eat them yourself? I still have something to do, so I'll take my leave first. Just as she was about to turn around and leave, Xianyuan Mose grabbed her hand. He frowned and looked at her. It's so late and you just came back. Where are you going? Is there something you can't deal with tomorrow? It's too ostentatious tomorrow. It's easier to deal with things and the night is dark and the wind is strong. She turned around and shook off his hand. You rest first. Don't wait for me. With that, she walked out. Watching her figure leave the room and disappear from sight, Xianyuan Mose's brows didn't loosen. His face was slightly gloomy, and he seemed to be somewhat unhappy. The atmosphere in the room became somewhat oppressive. Ying Yi, who was standing by the door, didn't dare to breathe. Just as he was about to leave, he heard his master's cold voice. Chapter 2768. Ying Yi lowered his head slightly and went forward. He took the pastries and the 2 bowls on the table and quietly left the room. After he closed the door for his master, he couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. It seemed that he didn't send the pastries at the right time. No, it should be that Yun Shuexin sent the pastries at the wrong time. However, Why did it seem like these two ancestors were quarreling? The atmosphere inside was so tense that he didn't even dare to breathe loudly. At this time, he couldn't help but be curious. Where did Hui Lang go with the ghost doctor's people? If he was here, the person who sent the pastries and walked in front of his master and the ghost doctor wouldn't be him. In the guest room of the west courtyard, Yun Shueshin, who was dressed in white, sat at the table and fiddled with the wick of the lamp. She watched the sparks fly and watched the lights light up, making the room clearer. She couldn't help but smile. Her expression was indescribable, and no one knew what she was thinking. On the other side, Fenjiu went to Nalan Ruochen's house after leaving the foam manor. She climbed over the wall and avoided the people in the manor and came to his courtyard. After passing through the array he set outside and entering the courtyard, she didn't see anyone. But seeing the light in the room, she asked, "Are you asleep?" Nalan Mo Chen was surprised when he heard Fenjiu's voice. He put down the book in his hand and walked out. When he saw her in red sitting at the table in the courtyard drinking wine, he walked over. "When did you come back?" "Today." She took out another cup and poured him a cup. "Why did you come here to drink?" He looked at her and asked, "Are you in a bad mood?" Fenjiu glanced at him. "Who said I'm in a bad mood? Can't I come to drink with you?" She picked up the cup and drank it. She drank the wine in the cup in one gulp and poured it again. "I want to ask, why did your master ask me to go to the immortal ladder?" She drank the wine and said, "I stayed there for a few months, but it didn't seem to be anything special." "You've entered the heavenly god realm." Nalan Mo Chen looked at her and said gently, "How can you say that it's nothing special? From what I can see, the aura on your body is very different from before. It is likely that not only has your strength increased, but your mental state has also improved." You're right. I don't know about other things, but my strength did increase. Now, I'm already a heavenly god. I thought I'd be stuck at the immortal emperor realm for a long time, but I didn't expect that after eating a lotus seed, my strength would increase explosively. In the end, I even broke through and became a heavenly god. She swirled the wine in her cup and said, "Speaking of which, other than luring away those people who want the ancient green lotus in my body, my strength has also increased. Moreover, I have also obtained a pool of golden lotus there. I have even climbed up that mysterious stairway of immortality." Her voice carried a bit of carelessness, without any fluctuations, as if she was talking about someone else's matter. He raised his head and drank the wine before continuing to pour. "It's just that the higher your cultivation, the more boring it is to stand at the top. Did you know? On the stairway of immortality, I saw many cultivators trying to climb it. They tried to reach the top of the stairway of immortality, but in the end, they either came down on their own accord or were pushed down by the pressure from above. The lighter ones were severely injured, and the heavier ones were crippled." Chapter 2769. As he listened to her talk and watched her drink cup after cup of wine, his heart skipped a beat. He lowered his voice and asked, "Then why didn't you enter when you were at the door?" "I heard Master say that place is another world. In that world, there are cultivators who are at least at the divine realm." "That's right. That open door leads to that new world. There are indeed stronger cultivators there. Perhaps it's more suitable for cultivators to live there." She spoke unhurriedly and poured herself another cup of wine. After finishing the wine in the cup, she slammed the cup on the table and looked at Mo Chen. "But, so what? My family and friends, the people I love, and the people I care about are all here. Tell me, what's the point of going there alone? Do you really want me to break all 6 of my spiritual roots and be all alone?" Hearing this, Mo Chen's eyes flashed. He lowered his gaze and took a sip of wine from the cup in front of him. He didn't say anything and just listened quietly to Fenjiu until she suddenly stopped talking and looked at him. "Why aren't you saying anything?" Mo Chen was stunned and smiled gently. "I'm listening. Are you done?" Do you feel better now that you've said it? Fengjiu glanced at him and didn't say anything. Is it because of the woman with the surname Yun living in your residence? Is that why you're in a bad mood? Mo Chen asked with a smile. He looked at her and said, this isn't like you. It's also not like you. I'm not in a bad mood because of that woman. Fengjiu said. When she was about to pour more wine, Mo Chen stopped her. That's enough. Don't drink any more. It's not good for your health. He looked at her and asked, if it's not because of that woman, then did Moze annoy you? What did he do to annoy you? Fengjiu was silent for a while and said, he didn't really annoy me. It's just that I'm not in a good mood. She secretly came back because she missed him. She wanted to see the person in her heart. However, she didn't think that when she saw him, he would be with a woman. Although that woman was his junior sister, he had never been so close to any other woman before. Another reason was that even though the two of them had clearly met, he couldn't recognize her. After returning to the estate, he spoke a lot to protect that woman, as if he was afraid that she would do something to that woman. This caused her originally joyous mood to become inexplicably downcast. She was a little unhappy, but the two of them didn't even quarrel. This kind of sulking was also hard to say. Mo Chen smiled and looked at her and said in a warm voice, I've been to the Feng residence a few times recently. I've also seen that woman with the surname Yun twice. Aside from her outstanding appearance and bearing, she's not a stupid person. Otherwise, Moze wouldn't have let her stay in the Feng residence. I feel that it's impossible for her to not be interested in Moze. She just hit it very well. Moze didn't notice. Perhaps he treated her differently from others from the beginning. However, you don't need to worry. As I see it, Moze only has you in his heart. Even if he treats that woman with the surname Yun differently, it should only be because she's his junior sister. Fengjiu glared and unhappily said, is there anyone who comforts someone like you? Chapter 2770. I haven't even exchanged blows with her yet. How can I let her leave my residence just like that? Fengjiu snorted softly, she didn't come back today. We only met briefly, but I heard that she's very comfortable in my residence. She toyed with the wine cup in her hand and said, I came back secretly because I didn't want to alert those people who have their eyes on the green lotus. But it seems like they'll come knocking on my door soon. With your strength as an enlightened god, you don't have to be afraid of them. Naturally, you don't have to come back secretly. He paused and looked at her, you're worried about implicating the people around you, aren't you? Fengjiu didn't say anything. It was a silent agreement. Actually, the people around you are also very strong. You don't have to worry too much. He paused and looked at her, then said, you just came back today, so you probably didn't have a good rest. Don't drink any more. Go back quickly. Fengjiu glared at him, you want to chase me away? I didn't come here to drink alone. After saying that, she took out a lotus seed from the space and said, I found a golden lotus seed like this in the Penglai Immortal Island. I also ate this lotus seed to make a breakthrough. Do you think this is the ancient golden lotus? Anyway, she couldn't tell. However, when she ate the green lotus seed, it looked similar. That wasn't it. It seemed to be different from ordinary lotus seeds. Mo Chen glanced at it and shook his head, this isn't the ancient golden lotus. However, there's a trace of its aura on this lotus seed. I think it's related. The aura of the ancient golden lotus? She looked at Mo Chen in surprise, why can't I feel it? Hearing this, Mo Chen smiled slightly. He didn't elaborate and only said gently, you should go back. Moze is probably still waiting for you. Fengjiu stood up and looked around the courtyard, saying, don't you have a room here? I'll sleep here tonight and won't go back. As she spoke, she walked towards a side room in the basement. After entering, she slammed the door shut. Mo Chen was slightly taken aback. He stared at the closed door for a long while before regaining his senses. He shook his head and smiled helplessly. Looking at the lotus seed in his hand, he called out, "You haven't taken your lotus seed yet. That's for you." Fengjiu's voice came from the room. Hearing this, Mo Chen paused, looked at the lotus seed in his hand, and then said, "Thank you, but I don't have a gift in return." Hearing no sound from the room, he stood up with a smile, took the lotus seed, and walked towards his room. After closing the door, he looked at the lotus seed in his hand. No one knew what he was thinking. In the end, he took out an exquisite brocade pouch and put the lotus seed in it, then tied it to his waist. In the Feng manor, Xianyuan Mose waited for a whole night without sleeping, but Fengjiu didn't return. He walked outside, and walked towards the main door with his hands behind his back. However, when he passed by the pavilion near the fake mountain, he saw Yun Shueshin sitting there eating breakfast. "Senior brother. Why are you up so early today?" Yun Shueshin looked surprised to see him. "I'm preparing to go out for a walk," Xianyuan Mose said, and walked outside. "Senior brother, wait," Yun Shueshin called out. She picked up the fruit on the table and quickly walked forward to give it to him. "It's so early. Senior brother must not have eaten yet, right? I only have a bowl of porridge, so I won't give it to senior brother. Senior brother, have some fruit." Chapter 2771. Yun Shueshin followed his gaze and saw a red figure walking towards them. She turned around to look carefully and saw that it was a woman wearing a dazzling red dress. The red dress was dazzling and flamboyant, and the belt wrapped around her slender waist. There was a 7-colored glass feather hanging from her waist. As she walked, the 7-colored glass feather swayed gently, looking very beautiful. When she looked up, her gaze landed on the woman's face. When she saw her face, even though she was already extremely beautiful, she couldn't help but feel her heart skip a beat. This woman in red could really be called a stunner. Her black hair was simply coiled up with a jasper hairpin, and the rest naturally fell behind her back, reaching her waist. She had never seen anyone with such a temperament in a red dress. When ordinary people wore red, they would more or less have a trace of gaudy color. However, this woman wore red with a different and refined temperament. Originally, he thought that she would give people a feeling of beauty. However, because of the pair of clear and bottomless eyes under this red-clothed woman's willowy eyebrows, her entire temperament was far from being beautiful. Instead, a kind of cold and elegant aura appeared. Her exquisite and beautiful facial features, set off by her red clothes, gave off a cold yet not glamorous, bewitching yet extraordinary feeling. Her eyes were deep and bottomless, but the corners of her lips carried a lazy smile that was neither a smile nor a smile. As she slowly walked over, her footsteps were light and casual. However, it gave off a noble and otherworldly aura, as well as an intimidating aura of a superior. This must be the ghost Dr. Fengjiu. Indeed, seeing once was better than hearing 100 times. This must be Miss Yun. Fengjiu walked over, and his gaze fell on Yun Shueshin as he sized her up. He smiled and said, "I heard that a beautiful guest has come to the residence. Seeing you today, you are indeed extraordinary." Yun Shueshin smiled gently and looked at Fengjiu, saying, "No matter how dazzling Shueshin is, it can't even compare to half an inch of the ghost doctor." As she spoke, she slightly bent her knees and bowed, "Please take care of me in the future, ghost doctor." "Miss Yun's words are too serious," Fengjiu said, looking at her and said, "Those who come are guests. As the host, I naturally have to treat them with respect. I heard senior brother say that the ghost doctor went on a long trip, so you must have just returned. You must have a lot to say to senior brother, so I won't disturb the two of you." She smiled and left first. After she left, Fengjiu walked inside, but after a few steps, his hand was grabbed by Mose. "Are you still angry?" Fengjiu looked back at him and asked, "Did you offend me?" "Why would I be angry?" Then I'll accompany you for breakfast. Mose said. Mose said. I ate when I came back. Fengjiu said, breaking free from his hand and walking inside. Xianyuan Mose saw this and followed, but who knew that when Fengjiu returned to the courtyard, he would close the door. Even if he wanted to go in, he couldn't. Seeing this, he sat at the table in the courtyard and looked at the closed door. He couldn't help but feel that a woman's heart was really like a needle at the bottom of the sea. Sometimes, just because of a word, she could sulk. He didn't say anything to her, but just told her not to touch Shueshin, and she could sulk and ignore him. Suddenly, he felt that something was missing beside him. He called, Ing-yi. Master. Ing-yi walked out from the shadows. Chapter 2772. Xianyuan Mose asked, as if he hadn't seen Hui Lang since last night. Last night, Fengjiu had returned, and she had left in a fit of anger, so he didn't pay attention to whether Hui Lang was here or not. Now that he sat down, he realized that Hui Lang, who had often appeared in front of him and talked non-stop, seemed to have disappeared. Hearing this, Ing-yi paused for a moment, then said, last night, when the ghost doctor came, she had the shadow guards knock him out and carry him out. She said that he would be thrown into the city to be a beggar for a few days. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose was slightly startled. After thinking carefully, he remembered that when they met Fengjiu yesterday, Hui Lang seemed to be very talkative. Thus, he nodded, understood, you can leave. Yes. Ing-yi responded and then retreated. In the city, Hui Lang, who had been beaten black and blue, had his spiritual energy sealed. His clothes were tattered, and he sat in the corner of the street with a long face. He didn't know what had happened. After being knocked unconscious, he woke up as a beggar here, and his spiritual aura was sealed. He originally wanted to run back, but who knew that there was someone watching him in the dark, saying something about letting him be a beggar here for a few days to satisfy his cravings. What was so satisfying about being a beggar? He didn't want to be a beggar, being dirty all day and being looked at with disdain. However, everything he had on him had been confiscated. He had no money, and there was nothing to eat. It had only been half a day, but his stomach was already growling. Look at this beggar, a tall and strong beggar who has good hands and legs is a beggar here. How shameless. A woman passing by looked at Hui Lang with disdain and scolded him. Another woman who was walking with the woman said, nowadays, there are many people who have good hands and legs but don't work. They can only be beggars. This kind of person shouldn't be given alms. That's right. As Hui Lang listened, he lowered his head and covered his face with his hands, as if he was afraid of being recognized by someone familiar. After the two women walked away, he muttered to himself. It's not like I want to be a beggar. I have no choice. The shadow guards hiding in the shadows couldn't help but grin silently. When they heard that their master was going to make Hui Lang a beggar for a few days, they were very excited. Some of them even took the opportunity to beat Hui Lang up. Now that they saw him squatting here in his tattered beggar clothes, they were very curious. How exactly did Hui Lang provoke their master? Sigh, I'm starving. His stomach growled. Hui Lang couldn't help but stand up and walk along the street with the broken bowl. He came to a stall selling steaming buns. Staring at the steaming buns, he licked his lips and swallowed. Just as he was about to speak, he saw the vendor run out with a broom. Stinky beggar. Are you trying to interfere with my business? Hurry up and leave. If you don't leave, I won't be polite to you. The vendor waved the broom in his hand and threatened. He stared fiercely at the stinky and dirty Hui Lang. Hui Lang's mouth was still open. He hadn't said anything yet. Being chased away, he couldn't help but be unwilling to give up. He swallowed his saliva and said, Boss, I'm hungry. How about this? Give me a few meat buns first, and I'll give you the money in a few days. Double. How about double? Chapter 2773. Ouch! Hui Lang's head was hit by the broom. He hugged his head and shouted, "Isn't it just a few steamed buns? I wouldn't eat them if it was any other day. You call yourself a master? Get out of my way." The peddler waved his broom and chased him away. Then he came back and scolded, "A beggar pretending to be a master. If you're a master, then I'm your grandfather." Grey Wolf glared at him. You wait for me." It was true that when a tiger fell to the plains, he would be bullied by dogs. A hawker actually dared to bully him. Hui Lang took the broken bowl and left. However, no one gave him anything as he walked down the street. He didn't eat anything for the whole day. He was so hungry that he didn't have the strength to walk. If his spiritual power wasn't sealed, it would be fine. However, with his spiritual power sealed, the hunger in his body grew stronger. In the end, he could only return to the corner of the street and sit down. Looking at the people coming and going on the street, he sighed. It's not easy to be a beggar these days. In the evening, Fengjiu came out of her room and saw Xianyuan Mose sitting in the courtyard. She looked at him and asked, "Do you want to go out for a walk?" Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose smiled. "All right." Fengjiu walked out. Xianyuan Mose saw this and reached out to take her hand. When he saw her look at him, he smiled and said, "Let me hold your hand." He held her hand tightly and walked out. When Fengjiu saw this, she only looked at their tightly clasped hands and didn't say anything as she let him hold her hand. But when they reached the front yard, she stopped and said, "Bring Hao-er with you. Take him out for a walk. Then let the Leng Shuang take him with us." As he spoke, he instructed, "Go and tell Leng Shuang to bring Hao-er out with us." "Yes." Ing Yi answered and then went to Leng Shuang's courtyard. The two of them waited in front of a pavilion. However, before Leng Shuang and Hao-er arrived, Yun Shueshin arrived. "Senior brother, ghost doctor." Yun Shueshin, who was still dressed in white, slowly walked over. Looking at the two people in the pavilion, she asked with a smile, "I was just about to go out for a walk. Senior martial brother and ghost doctor, do you want to come along?" Xianyuan Mose glanced at Fengjiu. Seeing that she had no intention of speaking, he said, "We also want to go out." "Really? Can I go with you? It's boring to go shopping alone." She said a little embarrassedly, "I don't have many friends here. Usually, if senior martial brother doesn't accompany me, I'm always alone." Hearing this, Fengjiu's lips curved slightly. He glanced at her and said, "Then Miss Yun should go out more often. There are so many outstanding people in Hundred River City, and Miss Yun is so outstanding. Maybe it won't be long before you make new friends." Xianyuan Mose, who was sitting next to them, silently looked away. As a man, it was better for him to stay out of Fengjiu and Yun Shueshin's affairs. He didn't want to accidentally say the wrong thing and make her angry again. Yun Shueshin was slightly startled. She looked at Fengjiu, then at Xianyuan Mose, who was silent. She lowered her eyes and said in a lonely voice, "That's true. Ghost Doctor is going out with senior martial brother. It's not appropriate for me to follow." Chapter 2774. Her voice paused slightly, and her smile deepened. "I'm doing this for Miss Yun's sake. After all, our reputations in Hundred Rivers City are well known. If you follow us, most people won't dare to walk over and greet you." Yun Shueshin raised her head to look at her in astonishment. Seeing her face full of smiles, as if she was really thinking for her, she couldn't say a single word of objection. Finally, she gathered her thoughts and looked deeply at Fengjiu. Smiling gently, she said, "I'm really touched that the ghost doctor is so considerate of me. I've always treated senior brother as my family. In this unfamiliar place, senior brother has always accompanied me and taken care of me. If it weren't for the ghost doctor's words today, I think I would still rely on senior brother." As she spoke, she bent her knees and bowed to Fengjiu and Xianyuan Mo's, senior brother, ghost doctor, don't worry. I'll definitely make new friends here. I won't let you worry about me. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mo's secretly nodded, thinking that there was nothing wrong with her words. However, when Fengjiu heard this, he raised his brows. He felt that she was telling him that Mose had been accompanying her and taking care of her all this time. Senior brother, ghost doctor, I'll go out first. Yun Shuexin revealed a gentle smile, then left in front of them. After she left, Fengjiu looked at Xianyuan Mose and asked, what do you think of her words? There's nothing wrong with them. Xianyuan Mose said truthfully. Nothing wrong with them. Fengjiu raised his voice slightly and glanced at him from the corner of his eyes. Is there a problem? He was slightly surprised and asked in confusion. Hearing this, Fengjiu nodded and said, that's true. There's nothing wrong with them. If a man could understand a woman's heart, then it would be strange. It wasn't strange that he couldn't tell. Anyway, there was still a long way to go. She wanted to see how long this Yun Shuexin would stay here. She didn't believe that Mose would always think that there was nothing wrong with her. Master, Yama Lord. Ling Shuang came from not far away, carrying the child to their side. My son is here. Come, let mother hug him. Fengjiu's eyes narrowed as she smiled and reached out to hug the child. When Xianyuan Mose saw this, he couldn't help but ask, since you like children so much, when can we have one too? You haven't even gotten married yet. How can you have a child? As Fengjiu spoke, he carried the child and walked out, saying, besides, my little Hao is quite cute. I can't even take care of one. Another one? How can I take care of her? Xianyuan Mose followed behind and said, if you can't take care of them, you can ask Ling Shuang and the others to help. You don't have to take care of them yourself. Besides, I can take care of the children too. I can take care of 2 of them. You. Fengjiu turned around and looked at him in astonishment. He couldn't help but laugh. You can take care of 2 of them? Xianyuan Mose nodded with a straight face. Yes, I've been using this little guy for practice recently. I've been feeding him and coaxing him to sleep. I'm already very familiar with it. He was confident that if they had children, he could take care of 2 of them each. Pfft. Fengjiu didn't give him any face and laughed out loud. As she laughed, she waved her hand, don't tease me. You think you can take care of children? And 2 of them each? I don't believe it. Chapter 2775. Ling Shuang followed behind the 2 of them and chatted with them as they walked. She couldn't help but smile in her eyes. In fact, she also hoped that her master and the Yama Lord would have a few children quickly after they got married. Then she could help to take care of the children. However, seeing her master like this, she didn't know when they would get married and when they would have 2 more little masters for her to take care of. When they came to the door, the carriage was ready. Xianyuan Mose and Fengjiu got into the carriage with the child. Ling Shuang and the coachman sat outside. Master, where are we going? The coachman asked. Let's go to the Byway building. Fengjiu said. She sat in the carriage and played with the child. She said, in order not to let those people know that I came back, I specially learned the puppet skill and distributed several puppets to attract their attention. But it seems that my efforts were in vain. Hearing this, Mose said in a deep voice, it doesn't matter. Even if there is danger, I will stand in front of you. Fengjiu glanced at him and handed the child in her arms to him. You said that you have been taking care of him recently. Then you hold him. Who knew that when Mose reached out to take the child would start crying. His small hands were tightly clenched into fists as he waved them around. His cries were very loud. No matter how Mose coaxed him, he wouldn't stop, making him feel very awkward. Is he hungry? Mose looked at Fengjiu and asked. Fengjiu spread out her hands, indicating that she didn't know. Hearing the sound, Ling Shuang came in and said, "Ya my lord, the little master may have peed." It would have been better if she hadn't said anything, but as soon as she did, Xianyuan Mose felt a warm sensation on his palm. He hurriedly moved the child away to prevent him from being peed all over. He called out, "Ling Shuang, come in and help him change." "Yes." Ling Shuang was answering when he heard Fengjiu's words. "No need. Just pass me Hao's clothes. I'll help him change." As Fengjiu spoke, he took the child from Mose's arms and placed him on his lap. He untied the cloth wrapped around the child and took off his pants. She had asked Ling Shuang to make the child's pants, so it was easy for him to put them on and take them off. After taking off the child's wet pants and diapers, Fengjiu took the clean pants that Ling Shuang handed her and was about to help him put them on. However, when she saw that the child's 2 short legs were slightly red because of his chubby body, she couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. "Why is it red? Is it because it's too hot and red?" She muttered and checked the reddened area on the little guy's thigh. She didn't notice that Xianyuan Mose was staring at the little guy who was blinking and biting his little fist. When he saw Fengjiu touch the little guy's reddened thigh, he couldn't help but say, "Let me do it." "You want to help him apply some medicine, right?" "I'll do it." Fengjiu looked up at him in surprise. "I'll do it. If you hold him, he'll cry again. Besides, it's just applying some medicine. I still have to help him put on his pants." Xianyuan Mose opened his mouth but didn't know what to say. He couldn't say that he couldn't bear to see her change the little brat's diaper and that he couldn't bear to see the little teapot between the little brat's legs waving in front of her, could he? Chapter 2776. She looked at the child who was laughing happily in her arms with a smile and said, "You are so cute and fat. You must be more adorable if you wear a belly band." "Well, I've decided. I'll find some good materials and ask Ling Shuang to make 2 for you." Xianyuan Mose looked at her holding the child and talking to herself. He could not help but twitch his mouth and said, "He is so young. He won't understand even if you tell him." Hearing this, Fengjiu looked at him and said, "What do you mean he won't understand? If you yell at him, he will cry immediately. Do you believe it? Isn't that normal? Not to mention a child, even an adult could not withstand his anger." After a while, the carriage stopped. The coachman said, "Master, ya my lord, we've arrived at the byway building." "Well." Mose responded and got out of the carriage first. He stood aside to help Fengjiu lift the curtain and asked, "Do you need me to hold the child?" "It's okay. I can hold him." Fengjiu said, got out of the carriage and walked into the building with him. The carriage retreated to the side, and Ling Shuang followed them into the wing room on the 2nd floor of the byway building. Thinking that Fengjiu might not eat well outside during this period, Xianyuan Mose ordered a table full of her favorite dishes, "Eat more." He put some dishes in her bowl. After a while, the small bowl was piled up like a small hill. Fengjiu handed the child to Ling Shuang. Then he picked up the chopsticks and said, "Enough. Don't take too much." One of them was eating, and the other was taking dishes. Most of the time, Fengjiu was eating, and Xianyuan Mose was taking dishes. Seeing that Fengjiu almost finished eating, Xianyuan Mose asked, "Did you go to Mo Chen's place last night?" "Yes, I took the lotus seed and asked him. He said that the lotus seed was not the ancient golden lotus, but it should be related to the ancient golden lotus. He said that it was an excellent thing." Fengjiu said as he ate, "I even gave him a lotus seed." "Are you still resting at his place?" Xianyuan Mose said sourly. "Yes." "Who asked you to make me angry?" Fengjiu glanced at him, put down his chopsticks, and drank a cup of wine. "I didn't plan to come back so early, but who knew that he kept chasing me away? I slept in the guest's room for the whole night, but for some reason, I couldn't fall asleep." Hearing this, the corners of his lips curled up slightly, and his deep voice carried a smile. "Tonight, I'll sleep with you. My hand will be your pillow. You'll definitely be able to sleep soundly." Hearing this, Fengjiu held back his smile and lightly sighed. I've been alone these past few days, and I've already gotten used to being alone. I suddenly feel that if there's another person in the bed, I won't be able to sleep well. She looked at him and said with a serious expression, "Also, we haven't gotten married yet. Sleeping with you is really damaging to my reputation. I feel that it's better if we live separately. Either way, your Ling residence is right next to my Foam residence." "No." Xianyuan Mo's face darkened and said, "We're already engaged. We're only missing the wedding ceremony and the wedding night." "That's right. I feel that although we're engaged, the day of our wedding is still far away." As she spoke, she looked at him and asked, "When do you think we'll get married?" "As long as you want, any time is fine." It was clearly him who had been waiting for her to get married, but who knew that the wedding would be delayed again and again. Chapter 2777. Hearing his words, Feng Jiu sighed softly. "Believe it or not, if we get married, not to mention the group of people who have designs on my ancient green lotus, even the people of the demon race will definitely take the opportunity to cause trouble. I really don't want all the relatives and friends who will come to our wedding to be in danger because of this. I also don't want our wedding to become a good opportunity for those people to take action. How could she not want them to get married as soon as possible? Hold a grand wedding and invite all their friends and family to attend. Give them their blessings." However, she also knew that if they really held a wedding, things would not go as they wished. Xianyuan Mose looked at her deeply when he heard her words. It turned out that she had thought about it before, but she thought too much. She thought about all the things that might happen. He pondered deeply. If he wanted to eliminate all the hidden dangers that she was worried about, then he had to become the strongest in the world. He had to become a supreme expert who could destroy the world with a flick of his finger. "What are you thinking about?" Feng Jiu waved his hand in front of him. Seeing that he was thinking about something, he said, "The food is getting cold, hurry up and eat. We'll go to the night market later and then go home." Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose nodded. "All right." He didn't say anything else and continued to eat. After the meal, they sat for a while, drank a cup of tea, paid the bill, and got up to leave. Leng Shuang took the child's place and followed them. After they left the building, Feng Jiu carried the child and walked with them to the main street. "Let's buy some toys for little Hao." Feng Jiu stopped in front of a stall. He picked up some toys and looked at them. In the end, he picked some for Leng Shuang to pay for and left. The three of them walked down the street. When they passed by a pancake stall, Feng Jiu stopped and said to Leng Shuang behind him, "Buy 2 pancakes." Leng Shuang was slightly surprised. Was his master not full? Why do you still want pancakes? Although she was puzzled, she did not ask. Instead, she took out some money and bought 2 pancakes. Xianyuan Mose glanced at Feng Jiu. No one knew what he was thinking, but the corners of his lips curled up slightly. A trace of a smile flashed across his face. His gaze swept past the front and he continued walking forward. The three of them walked until they came to a place at the corner of the street. Feng Jiu suddenly stopped and looked at the figure in beggar clothes sitting at the corner of the street. "The weather is good tonight, and the people on the street are lively." Feng Jiu's voice rang out. When this voice reached the beggar's ears, he quickly raised his head and looked in the direction of the voice in surprise. "Master, Ghost Doctor, Leng Shuang." He rolled and crawled over, wanting to pull on the corner of his master's clothes, but felt that his hands were very dirty, so he stood in front of them with a silly smile. Seeing Hui Lang suddenly appear in front of him, Xianyuan Mose's eyes flashed with understanding. Leng Shuang was slightly surprised. This was Hui Lang. How did he end up like this? He felt strange and sized him up. Seeing that his spiritual power was sealed and his face was bruised and swollen, if he wasn't familiar with him, he wouldn't have recognized him. Feng Jiu smiled and looked at the gray wolf in front of her who was dressed like a beggar. She said, "Who are you? Don't shout, we don't know you." Chapter 2778. How could you possibly be Hui Lang? Even though Hui Lang isn't good-looking, he doesn't have a swollen and bruised face like yours. Feng Jiu pursed her lips as she spoke, playing with the child in her arms. Hearing this, Hui Lang couldn't help but stare blankly. Why didn't the ghost doctor recognize him? Why? He stared blankly, unable to understand even now. Look at you, your hands and feet are fine. Why don't you go find something to do? Feng Jiu glanced at him, shaking her head as she spoke. Hui Lang opened his mouth, wanting to speak, but he didn't know what to say to her. Feng Jiu looked at him blankly standing there and couldn't help but smile. Are you hungry? When Hui Lang heard this, he hurriedly nodded. I'm hungry, I'm hungry. I've been hungry all day and haven't eaten anything. Master, ghost doctor, take me back. I think I must have done something wrong. Otherwise, Master and the ghost doctor wouldn't punish me like this. He scratched his head as he spoke. Even though his brain wasn't as sharp as Ing Yi's, he wasn't stupid. Seeing the two of them like this, how could he not understand that he must have done something wrong? Who knows when he offended the ghost doctor? Otherwise, how could he have ended up as a beggar? Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind. A beggar? That's right, why did he become a beggar? Didn't he just meet a little beggar yesterday and say a few words? Thinking of this, he was instantly dumbfounded. He finally understood why he was sent to become a beggar. It turns out that he really did offend the ghost doctor. Thinking of what he said when he met the little beggar yesterday, then looking at the ghost doctor and master in front of him, he even had the heart to die. Why was his reaction so slow? Only now did he remember. Seeing his expression change, Feng Jiu smiled and said to the Leng Shuang behind her, aren't there still 2 pancakes? Give them to him. Hearing this, Leng Shuang stepped forward and handed the 2 pancakes that were still steaming hot to Hui Lang. Leng Shuang finally realized that the 2 pancakes his master bought were for Hui Lang. Holding the 2 pancakes, Hui Lang looked at them with a long face and said, Master, ghost doctor, I know I was wrong. Can you let me go back earlier? At this point, Xianyuan Mose, who had been silent all this while, finally spoke up, since you're allowed to be a beggar here, then be a beggar for a few days. Just treat it as training. As soon as he finished speaking, he left with Feng Jiu and the others, ignoring Hui Lang. Holding the pancakes, Hui Lang watched as they left in front of him, leaving him standing at the corner of the street. If it wasn't for the 2 warm pancakes in his hands, he wouldn't have believed that they had just been here. Feng Jiu played with the child on the road. The 3 of them didn't take a carriage, but walked leisurely. However, when they reached the corner of the street, they saw that there were many onlookers in front of them. Faintly, the voices of those onlookers could be heard. That girl should be from outside. It's rare to see her. She's also unlucky to come out alone and meet the one-eyed man on the street. No one dares to provoke this one-eyed man in this area. I think that girl looks familiar, as if I've seen her before. Chapter 2779. That's right. That girl is not weak either. Feng Jiu and the other 2 paused when they heard what the crowd was saying. They looked towards the crowd, but their line of sight was blocked by the people in front of them. They could not see clearly what was going on. Feng Jiu said to Leng Shuang, let's go take a look. Why did she feel that these people might be talking about Yun Shuexin? Leng Shuang nodded slightly and walked forward, squeezing through the crowd. When she saw the scene in front of her, her eyes flashed, and she quietly retreated. She glanced at Xianyuan Mose, then looked at her master and said, Master, the girl they are talking about is Miss Yun. Fengjiu's mouth twitched when she heard that. She had guessed correctly. Instinctively, she looked at Xianyuan Mo's and said with a faint smile, "It's your junior sister." Xianyuan Mo's expression was normal as he said, "It's okay. She can protect herself with her strength. So we don't have to pay attention to her." Fengjiu raised her eyebrows and asked. "Since she can handle it, she doesn't need our help." Based on his understanding of Yun Shuexin, the average person here could not possibly be her opponent. After all, she was not a weak woman. Her strength was at the top of her family's younger generation. If she could not even deal with such a person, then she would not be Yun Shuexin. When she heard that, Fengjiu thought about it for a moment. Then, her eyes shifted and she said, "Although that's true, he is still our guest. It doesn't seem too good to let our guest face something like this." As she spoke, she handed the child to Xianyuan Mo's and said, "I'll go take a look." Xianyuan Mo's shook his head helplessly. He knew that she was someone who wanted to see the world in chaos. Fengjiu walked forward, and the crowd was suddenly pushed aside. They were about to turn around and curse, but when they saw that it was Ghost Dr. Fengjiu, they could not help but open their mouths and quickly move aside to make a path. When she came to the front, she saw Yun Shuexin, who was dressed in white and had an outstanding appearance, standing in a corner with a cold expression. In front of her was a burly one-eyed man. The corners of Yun Shuexin's lips curled up slightly. She swept her gaze around and looked at some of the rogue cultivators in the surroundings. There were about 10 of them in total. Adding the strength of the one-eyed man, they were more than enough to be a street bully. However, Yun Shuexin's strength was at the immortal sage realm. She wasn't someone that could be defeated by ordinary people. Thinking of this, she crossed her arms in front of her chest and watched calmly. She wondered why this one-eyed man was so blind as to target Yun Shuexin. "What? Carry this little girl back for me." As the one-eyed man spoke, the corners of his mouth curled into an evil smile as he stared at the beautiful woman in white with a graceful figure. He was already thinking about what to do with this beauty after he carried her back. "Boss, this woman doesn't look like a girl from an ordinary family. Won't it cause trouble if we really attack her?" A rogue cultivator asked in a low voice. He felt that the woman in white did not show any fear even when surrounded by them, so he could not help but feel uncertain. Chapter 2780. A red mark slowly seeped out from the man's neck, and a faint smell of blood permeated the air. This scene gave the surrounding onlookers a fright, and they all retreated one after another. Some of them looked in horror at the white-clothed woman who had taken the man's life with a single move. Fengjiu raised her eyebrows. Seeing that Yun Shuexin was looking at her, she walked forward with her sword in hand, ignoring the one-eyed man who had one eye wide open in shock. She came before Fengjiu and looked at Fengjiu as she said, "Ghost Doctor, I'm your guest. Are you going to watch your guest be bullied like this?" Fengjiu's lips curled slightly, and he said with a smile, "With Miss Yun's strength, it's more than enough to deal with these hooligans. It's rare to see Miss Yun's heroic appearance, so I naturally won't let go of this opportunity." Yun Shuexin quietly looked at Fengjiu, and her eyes swept past her enchanting and beautiful face. She looked at Xianyuan Mo's, who was walking forward with a child in his arms, and asked, "Does senior brother feel the same way?" Xianyuan Mo's looked at her as usual, and then glanced at the corpses on the ground. He said in a low voice, "With your strength, these people won't be able to get close to you, so there's no possibility of you being bullied." Hearing this, Yun Shuexin raised the sharp sword in her hand, and a ray of sword chi shot out from her hand. She didn't even turn around, and the ray of sword chi accurately struck the one-eyed man who was about to slip away. Bang! The one-eyed man didn't even have the chance to scream before he fell to the ground with his eyes wide open. His body twitched, and he stopped breathing. Yun Shuexin lowered her eyes and put away the long sword in her hand. Her emotionless voice sounded softly, "Senior brother is right. How can these people be my match? With their strength, they won't be able to get close to me, but... Her voice paused, and she raised her beautiful eyes to look at Xianyuan Mo's. Senior brother's indifference to me has hurt Xuexin's heart. Does senior brother know that Xuexin cares about senior brother? Hearing this, Xianyuan Mo's was stunned. He subconsciously looked at Fengjiu, afraid that she would misunderstand. Who knew that she would have such thoughts? She had never expressed such thoughts before, and he had never thought about it in that direction. Fengjiu played with the hair that fell in front of her chest, and her lips curled into a smile. She looked deeply at Yun Xuexin, and said leisurely, Miss Yun's confession in front of more than a dozen corpses on the ground. It's really shocking. As soon as Fengjiu's words came out, the stunned people around also came to their senses. That's right. This girl has an extraordinary temperament and is so beautiful. How could she do such a thing? You really can't judge a book by its cover. What's so strange? Didn't you see how she took those people's lives without even blinking her eyes? Although they were ruffians, she killed them in one move. No one else can do that. Yun Xuexin didn't seem to hear the words around her, and her expression was normal. She looked at the expressionless Xianyuan Mo's, and said softly, Senior brother, I just couldn't control myself. Xianyuan Mo's didn't say anything. He only frowned slightly, and looked at her deeply. Chapter 2781. Hearing these words, no matter how well-mannered Yun Xuexin was, her expression still changed. She coldly glanced at Fengjiu, then looked at Xianyuan Mo's, who had not spoken the entire time. She knew in her heart that this was just her wishful thinking, but so what if it was like this? Fengjiu was right. Xianyuan Mo's was so outstanding. Her heart was in love with him, so what was strange about her not being able to control her feelings? This was like a man loving a woman's beauty, and a woman loving a man's excellence. Wasn't this very normal? For an outstanding woman like her, with her family's strength and appearance, how could she be interested in a normal man? Only someone like Xianyuan Mo's, who exuded the aura of a noble emperor, was worthy of her, Yun Xuexin. So what if he loved the ghost Dr. Fengjiu? She did not believe that she, Yun Xuexin, who was outstanding in all aspects, would lose to Fengjiu, who came from a small place. Senior brother. She looked at Xianyuan Mo's. Just as she was about to speak, she was interrupted by his words. You should move out of the foam manor. Xianyuan Mo's said in a low voice. His gaze indifferently glanced at her. I will have someone prepare a new courtyard for you. He definitely would not allow a woman with ulterior motives to exist at his side. Even if this person was his junior sister, even if she had saved his life, it was still the same. Yun Xuexin opened her beautiful eyes wide in disbelief. Her eyes were filled with hurt. Senior brother wants to chase me away. Senior brother promised to take care of me, but now you want to chase me away. Xianyuan Mo's furrowed his brow. It is not suitable for you to live in the foam manor. Even if he did not understand women's hearts, he could still hear how provocative her words were. Saying those words in front of Fengjiu, she wanted to drive a wedge between the two of them. It was just that she had underestimated the feelings between him and Fengjiu. The feelings that they had developed along the way were not something that could be stirred up with just a few words from her. Yun Xuexin looked at him. Her eyes were filled with tears, which made her look a bit weak. Her voice faintly drifted out, Senior brother, if you won't let me live in the foam manor, then I can live in your manor. I am here alone. How can you bear to let me live outside by myself? Fengjiu didn't say anything. He just looked at Yun Xuexin with a faint smile. She was still wondering how long she could pretend. He didn't expect her to be unable to hold herself back after coming out alone tonight. However, it had to be said that Yun Xuexin was indeed a rare beauty. Looking at the expression on her face, it was as if she had been wronged. Her pair of beautiful eyes were filled with tears as she stared at Xianyuan Mo's. If someone with weak willpower saw her like this, their heart would probably soften. Unfortunately, Mose was not an ordinary person, and her extravagant hopes were destined to fail. Jiu, let's go back. Xianyuan Mose retracted his gaze and did not look at Yun Shuexin. Instead, he held the child who was blinking her clear eyes and eating her fist in one hand. He held Fengjiu's hand with the other and led her away. Ling Shuang was a few steps behind them. When she turned around to leave, she looked at Yun Shuexin and coldly said, "Miss Yun, it is good for people to know their own limits." After saying this, she did not look at Yun Shuexin, whose face had turned pale in an instant. Instead, she quickly followed her master's footsteps. Chapter 2782. Sitting in the carriage, Xianyuan Mose looked at Fengjiu, who was obviously in a good mood. He was a little confused, so he asked carefully, "Jiu, are you happy that she confessed to me?" He thought that she would be angry, but who would have thought that she was actually quite happy? Why was that? Hearing this, Fengjiu glanced at him. Seeing that he was sitting up nervously, as if waiting for her answer, she said, "What's there to be unhappy about? She likes you, which proves that I have good taste. You're outstanding." Especially since such an outstanding man was Fengjiu's. Thinking of this, the corners of her lips curled up happily. Sigh, seeing that Yun Shuexin's heart was broken and she couldn't get what she wanted, why was she so happy? Yes, it should be a bad taste. You're not angry? Xianyuan Mose breathed a sigh of relief, but he was still a little confused. Angry? Fengjiu raised his eyebrows. Why should I be angry? Just because she likes you? Seeing that he nodded with a slightly stunned expression, she couldn't help but burst out laughing. Idiot! How could she forget that this was a piece of thousand-year-old ice, a piece of thousand-year-old ice that no one could get close to? Even though they had always been apart more than together, she never doubted that he would fall in love with another woman and treat her differently. When they were together, they rarely got angry or quarreled. It seemed that this time when she was sulking, he was a little worried that she would get angry again. She narrowed her eyes, looked him up and down, and said, "We didn't have a good chat this time. Your junior sister is from overseas, and you went there with your master. You even stayed with her family. Did something happen that I don't know about? You didn't tell me about it." Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose's eyes flashed, "This? Really?" Fengjiu raised her voice and stared at him. It's a long story. I'll tell you in detail when we get back to the courtyard." He laughed bitterly and said helplessly. Hearing this, Fengjiu didn't ask any more questions. It seemed like there really was something she didn't know about. For Mose to agree to stay here and take care of Yun Shuexin, what could it be? She couldn't help but be curious. On the other side, the dozen or so corpses on the ground had been taken care of. Yun Shuexin walked towards the Feng Manor as the night deepened. Thinking about what happened tonight, she couldn't help but feel a little regretful. Impulse is a bad thing. Even with her temperament, she was still provoked to the point of being impulsive. It could be seen that this ghost Dr. Fengjiu was indeed difficult to deal with. However, he wanted her to move out. How was she going to get out of this situation? Once Xianyuan Mose said that, there was no turning back. What should he do? How could he break this stalemate? She thought to herself. Suddenly, she faintly heard a voice enter her ears. Immediately, she stopped walking towards the Feng Manor. She looked all around her and quietly retreated. She then followed the voice in the direction of the voice. Feng Manor in the courtyard, Fengjiu and Xianyuan Mose were sitting in a room. She looked at Xianyuan Mose, who had been drinking tea the entire time, and said, "Didn't you say that we'll talk about it after we get back to the manor? This Yun Shuexin actually came for you, right?" Chapter 2783. Fengjiu glanced at him. "That's not what I want to know." Xianyuan Mose was stunned for a moment. After calming down, he said, "She saved my life. Seeing her raise her eyebrows and look at him, waiting for his next words, he sighed softly. It was because she saved my life that I promised to take care of her when she came with Master's letter. Hearing this, Fengjiu suddenly understood. So that's how it was. No wonder he, who didn't respect his master, would promise to take care of Yun Shuexin. It turned out that there was something she didn't know. She saved your life when you were overseas. Were you injured? Or what? She frowned slightly and asked. When he came back, he didn't say anything. She also didn't know that he had an accident when he went out. At that time, the matter that I helped Master with was very troublesome. When we were overseas, we were even hunted down. At that time, I was seriously injured and had to hide from those people. Master found junior sister and sent me to their family to help cover for them. Speaking of this, he sighed softly. The force that chased us was very strong. At that time, when the Yun family protected me, they risked being exterminated. Moreover, at that time, I was infected with the golden heart corroding insect. It was junior sister who risked her life to find something to lure the golden heart corroding insect out for me. It was because of this that I was able to survive. How could he not know that he would never forget a person's kindness? However, he had always thought that Yun Shuexin only saw him as her senior brother because of the friendship of fellow disciples. He didn't expect that. Fengjiu's heart couldn't help but rise when she heard this. Why didn't you tell me about such a dangerous thing when you came back? Golden heart corroding insect. That's a poison that burrows into the bones and blood. Moreover, to lure out the golden heart corroding insect, it's necessary. Her voice paused and her expression changed slightly. For a moment, she didn't speak. The only way to lure out the golden heart corroding insect is to use blood as a guide and add the golden heart corroding insect's favorite 7-leaf tip. Xianyuan Mose said slowly. Looking at Fengjiu's expression, he knew that she had already thought of the difficulty Yun Shuexin had in getting the medicine. The place where the 7-leaf tips grow must have extremely poisonous things, and there must be quite a lot of them. She looked at him with a complicated expression. Back then, she must have spent a lot of effort to get the guiding medicine goo for you. Xianyuan Mose pondered for a moment, then said, although I was heavily injured at that time and was in a semi-coma, my consciousness was still very clear. Thus, I knew that after junior sister drew out the golden heart erosion insect for me, she was bedridden for several days. At that time, I was recuperating in the Yun family for about half a month. Hearing this, Fengjiu looked at him deeply and said, why didn't you tell me that you encountered such danger outside? If you tell me that Yun Shuexin once saved your life like this, no matter how much I hate her, I will still give her some face. I was also afraid that you would be worried. Moreover, my body had already recovered by the time I returned. Naturally, I didn't want to tell you and make you worry. He laughed softly and held her hand, saying, it's okay. Since you don't like her, then I will think of other ways to repay her kindness. Fengjiu furrowed her brows and pondered for a moment. This kind of kindness couldn't be repaid with ordinary things. Mose was her man, and she naturally didn't want her man to owe another woman a favor that hadn't been repaid. Chapter 2784. I'll think of a way. I'll repay this favor for you. Fengjiu held his hand and said, if there's anything in the future, don't hide it from me. Hearing this, Mose's heart warmed. I'm a man. How can I let you shoulder everything? Don't worry. I'll think of a way to repay this favor. He was a man. Naturally, he couldn't say that she had to shoulder his matters. Furthermore, he owed her, so he naturally had to repay it. He wanted to shelter her from the wind and rain and protect her for the rest of her life. Naturally, he couldn't let her shoulder everything. Protect her for the rest of her life, his heart trembled. With his current strength as a heavenly god, he could be considered a top powerhouse on this continent. However, if he wanted to become a powerhouse in this world, to become a powerhouse that everyone in this world feared, to be able to protect her for the rest of her life, he had to become even stronger. Otherwise, when they met an enemy stronger than them, they would fall into a dead end. When he thought of this, he looked at her. He looked at the person in his heart. Even if he couldn't bear to see her suffer so much and encounter so many difficulties and dangers along the way, even if he couldn't bear to see her fall and rise again on this path of cultivation, he still had to let her grope and crawl along this path. Only when she stood at the peak, only when her strength could dominate everything, only when her strength could kill all the powerhouses in the world, could she and he look down on this world and not fear anyone. Ah, Joe. His deep voice rang out. Fengjiu looked at him. Seeing his solemn and cold expression, he couldn't help but feel a little surprised. This continent won't be our final stop. If we want to dominate everything and protect the people we want to protect, then we have to become even stronger until we can stand at the peak of this world. His voice paused for a moment, then he said, "So, let's go cultivate together." The path of cultivation has 9 heavens. The 9 heavens are beyond the heavens, the path to immortality on the immortal ladder, the heaven and earth in the profound light sect, and the immortal island of Penglai. We have to go again. Hearing this, Fengjiu was slightly stunned. She didn't expect him to say something like this. After so long, this was the first time he said that they should cultivate together and become stronger together. You mean that we should go to the immortal island of Penglai and use the immortal ladder to go to the place behind that door to cultivate and increase our strength? Yes. He nodded and said, "Our strength may be the strongest here, but there are stronger people outside of us. If we want to be fearless of anyone, then we have to stand at the peak of this world." He looked at her deeply and said in a deep voice, "I want to give you a grand wedding, so that everyone can share our happiness, so that you won't have to fear anyone in this world. I want you to live a worry-free life, and if you want to do all this, you have to become a supreme expert." Looking at the seriousness and determination in his eyes and listening to his words, Fengjiu's heart shook violently. She didn't speak for a long time and just held his hand tightly until her heart gradually calmed down. Chapter 2785. But. She blinked and smiled. The immortal ascension stairs will only appear in a year's time. Don't worry, we can settle everything here in a year's time. A year's time was more or less enough to arrange things. After all, they would have a long journey ahead of them. That's true. As she spoke, her heart skipped a beat. Then what about our son? To be honest, we still haven't figured out his background. If we leave him here, I won't be at ease. But if we bring him with us, I'm worried that no one will be able to take care of him. Moreover, if we don't reach the immortal emperor realm, we won't be able to reach the top of the immortal ascension stairs. It was because of this that she didn't go through the door directly. She could go, but what about them? Hearing this, Shenyuan Mose stood up and gently knocked her head. Where's your usual cleverness? Let's not talk about that little guy. Even if you want to bring Ling Shuang, Ling Hua, and the others with you, you can do it too. Huh? She looked at him in confusion. She didn't understand. Seeing that she really couldn't figure it out, he couldn't help but smile and shake his head. Have you forgotten that you have a treasure of heaven and earth on you? It's a treasure of space that can contain life. Hearing this, Fengjiu's eyes widened in shock. You're saying that we should bring them all into the space and then bring them there? Yes, we can use the space to bring them there. However, even if they're Ling Shuang, Ling Hua, and the others who are loyal to you, you can't let them know about your space. So even if you want to bring them into the space, you have to do it while they're unconscious. She had a treasure of space, and it wasn't an ordinary space. Even if they were her confidants, she couldn't let them know about it. Hearing this, Fengjiu slapped her head. That's right. How could I be so stupid? I didn't think of this and was worried about it. I'm so stupid, so stupid. She slapped her head and suddenly laughed foolishly. How about this, if we go there, I can bring them all with me. At that moment, she was incomparably grateful for the gift her nominal master had given her back then. Xianyuan Mose looked at her with amusement and said, then find a time to pick out the people you want to bring along and make preparations in advance. He paused for a moment before continuing, arrange everything as soon as possible. We'll find a time to go back and meet your parents and my father. We'll tell them about our plans so that they don't have to worry. Fengjiu smiled and nodded. Don't worry. I'll arrange it as soon as possible. She looked at him, and her heart felt warm and sweet. She took a step forward, wrapped her arms around his waist, and buried her face in his chest. Thank you. Thank you for everything you've done for me. She knew everything. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose's eyes overflowed with tenderness. He hugged her with one hand and stroked her hair with the other. His low and magnetic voice was filled with unconcealable affection. Silly girl. Chapter 2786. As the night deepened, the two of them prepared to rest. Leng Hua, who was outside the courtyard, rushed in. Seeing that the lights were still on in the room, he immediately said, Master, Yama Lord, something has happened. When the two people in the room heard this, they couldn't help but look at each other. They walked out and saw that Leng Hua was covered in blood. Fengjiu narrowed her eyes and asked, what happened? Leng Hua glanced at Xianyuan Mose and said, Master, when Du Fan and I came back, we met Miss Yun not far from the main gate. At that time, she was covered in injuries and her steps were unsteady. Before we could get close, she fainted. At that time, someone seemed to be chasing her from behind. After seeing me and Du Fan, that person left in the dark. Seeing that she seemed to be seriously injured and had lost a lot of blood, we quickly brought her back. Du Fan is now sending her back to her courtyard. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose's brows furrowed. His hands were clasped behind his back. No one knew what he was thinking. Fengjiu's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise when she heard this. There's actually someone in this city who can injure her and make her faint. She glanced at Xianyuan Mose and said, let's go and take a look. Xianyuan Mose nodded and walked with her towards Yun Shuexin's courtyard. Leng Hua followed behind them and walked towards the backyard. When they arrived at the courtyard, Du Fan was already waiting there. When he saw them enter, he stepped forward and called out, Yama Lord, Master, she's already in the room. They nodded slightly and walked in. As soon as they entered the room, the strong smell of blood assaulted their nostrils. When they walked into the room and saw Yun Shuexin lying on the bed, they were even more surprised. Yun Shuexin's white clothes were almost dyed red by the blood. Her clothes were torn, and there were many wounds on her body. It was indeed a ghastly sight. Fengjiu stepped forward to check on her. After a long time, he withdrew his hand and said to Xianyuan Mose, her internal injuries are not light. 2 of her left ribs are broken. Other than that, the rest are external injuries. Although there are many wounds on her body, they are not fatal. It's just that she has lost a lot of blood, her breathing is unstable, and her face is pale. She will need at least 10 days to half a month to recover. Xianyuan Mose looked at Leng Hua and asked, didn't you see who attacked her? With her strength, it's impossible for an ordinary person to injure her to this extent. If they fought, it would definitely attract the attention of others. Go and order people to investigate. You must find the source of the problem. Yes, sir. Leng Hua responded and then left. Du Fan, have Leng Hua come over and bandage her wounds. Fengjiu ordered Du Fan, who was standing to the side. Okay. Du Fan also responded and left. After they left, Fengjiu looked at Xianyuan Mose and asked, are you suspicious? Xianyuan Mose looked at him and nodded without denying it. That's right. I suspect that the person who injured her to this extent might be from overseas. However, one thing is certain. The person's strength is comparable to Yun Shuexin's. He walked around the room with his hands behind his back and said, however, who is the person? We have to wait until she wakes up and ask her. He stopped and looked at Fengjiu. Have the manner be more vigilant. If you have to go out sooner or later, let me go with you. It's better to be careful. Chapter 2787. The two chatted for a while in the room. Not long after, Leng Shuang came over. Master, Yama God. Leng Shuang saluted the two. Smelling the scent of blood in the room, she looked inside. Go help her bandage her wound. Then give her this pill. Fengjiu handed her a bottle and glanced at Xianyuan Mo's. This glance made Xianyuan Mo's feel a bit confused and asked, what is it? Your junior sister has been sent back to her courtyard for so long, yet we haven't thought of stopping her bleeding. With this amount of blood, her body will be a bit weak when she recovers. She did not pay attention to it, but Mose probably did not expect it at all. That's right, how could a person who did not care about anything think of stopping her bleeding first even if it wasn't life-threatening? It was only when she, who was at the top of his heart, was injured that he would panic. Thinking of this, her eyes curved into a smile. Xianyuan Mose did not know what she was thinking and only said, didn't you just say it? The wounds on her body are only small. They won't be a problem. It wasn't life-threatening. Before Leng Shuang came to bandage her, it was fine if she bled a bit. After all, to have him apply medicine for her. That was impossible. To have Fengjiu apply medicine for her. That was even more impossible. She won't die. Bleeding a bit is fine. Fengjiu said with a smile, let's go, let's go. Have Leng Shuang bandage her. We'll go back first. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose held her hand and walked back. On the way back, Fengjiu said, she is currently injured and unconscious. Let's postpone her moving out. After all, she was the person who saved his life. In her current state, it was not suitable for her to move out of the foam manor. You can decide. Xianyuan Mose said, next, I will need to arrange some matters in the Yen Hall. I will be a bit busy. Alright. I'll get someone to look after her. Suddenly, Xianyuan Mose stopped in his tracks, as if he was thinking about something. When Fengjiu saw him like this, she stopped and looked at him quietly. After a while, she saw him look at her. You said that in addition to internal injuries, she also had 2 broken ribs? Fengjiu blinked and nodded. Yes. Didn't I say it just now? She saw him frown slightly and asked, is there something wrong? Xianyuan Mose looked at her and sighed softly, during the time you weren't here, occasionally she would ask me to go out with her. She always knew when to advance and when to retreat. She never showed any affection for me. Naturally, I didn't think that way. I just thought that she treated me as her martial brother. His voice paused and his brows furrowed. His expression sank as he said, but after what she said on the street tonight, and seeing that she is injured and unconscious, the original plan to have her move out has been postponed. This has caused me to have a bold guess. Fengjiu was also a smart person and understood what he meant. Hearing this, she was stunned. You mean, could it be that she became like this on her own? Xianyuan Mose replied with a frown. Once the seed of suspicion was planted, it was impossible to believe it again. Just like how he never thought that she would fall in love with him and came to his side with ulterior motives. Chapter 2788. She held his hand and said, her injury was caused by an external force. Moreover, the internal injury was located in a place where she couldn't injure herself. The external injuries on her body were also caused by an external force, so the injury wasn't deep. After saying this, she looked at his tightly knitted brows and asked, why do you suspect that she would do that? Xianyuan Mose saw that she was looking at him with a puzzled expression and said, "Audio, she's not an ordinary person. She comes from a top family. She has a good reputation overseas. She's about the same age as you, and her strength is already at the sage immortal level. I think it's possible that she would do something because she likes me." He held her hand and walked as he said, "Before this, I treated her differently. Other than the reasons you know, it was also because she is very outstanding in all aspects. An outstanding person will be appreciated by others no matter where they are. She is like that. However, tonight's attack on her came at a coincidence. Moreover, what she said on the street first, so I can't have such suspicions." Hearing this, Fengjiu thought for a moment and said, "I'll be more careful." "Don't worry. If it was really as he guessed, then Yun Shuexian's scheming was really not ordinary. A person who dared to be so ruthless to herself was an opponent who could not be ignored." The next day, because she went to bed late last night, Fengjiu woke up late. When she got up, she saw that Xianyuan Mose was already gone, so she washed up and went out of the room. "You're awake. I asked the kitchen to prepare breakfast. You can eat it now." Xianyuan Mose, who was dressed in a black robe, was sitting at the table in the courtyard, reading a book in his hand. Ying Yi was standing in a corner of the courtyard. She walked over and looked at the breakfast on the table. She smiled and said, "It's all my favorite food." After she came out, Xianyuan Mose put away the book in his hand and scooped a bowl for her. "Eat more. Last night, you said that you had to deal with the matters at hand. I thought you had left early." She picked up some side dishes to eat. "I will accompany you to eat breakfast before returning to the Ling residence. I have already instructed Ying Yi to call some people over. I will make some arrangements." As he helped her pick up the food, he said, "I will handle the matters in the Ling residence. If there's anything, you can look for me." Fengjiu replied. After eating breakfast, he wiped the corners of his mouth and stood up, "Go do your work. Don't worry about things here." Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose revealed a smile and looked at her gently, "Don't tire yourself out, I will be back later." As he spoke, he left with Ying Yi and headed towards the Ling residence. After Fengjiu had people tidy up the things on the table in the courtyard, he also left the courtyard and walked towards Yun Shuexian's courtyard. When he arrived outside, he was greeted by Leng Hua. "Master. Is that woman awake?" Fengjiu asked and walked forward. "I was just about to tell you that she has woken up." Leng Hua followed beside him and said. Fengjiu nodded. When she came to the courtyard, she saw that Leng Shuang was also there. She asked, "Leng Shuang, come here. Who is taking care of her?" "It's Qingqing," Leng Shuang said. Chapter 2789. Yun Shuexian was lying on the bed. Her beautiful face was currently pale and weak. Her eyes were closed, as if she was frowning because of the pain from her wounds. When she heard the sound of footsteps, she slowly opened her eyes and looked at the person who had come. "How do you feel?" Fengjiu walked over and pulled over a chair to the side. He sat on the bed and looked at her. Yun Shuexian looked behind her and saw that only Leng Shuang had followed her. When her senior brother did not come, a trace of disappointment flashed through her heart. She closed her eyes and said with an indifferent expression, "I won't die yet." Hearing this, Fengjiu's lips curled into a smile, "You won't die from such a small injury. At most, you'll have to lie in bed for 10 days to half a month. However, this is also good. You're already injured like this, so I naturally can't bear to have you move out of the foam manor. You can stay here for now and recover from your injuries first." His clear eyes fell on her face, but he saw that she had closed her eyes and her face was calm and indifferent. He could not see anything. Seeing this, Fengjiu leaned back and sat down leisurely. He looked at her on the bed and said, how did Miss Yun encounter an attack last night? Who was it that attacked Miss Yun? I will only tell my senior brother. She turned her head slightly and looked at Fengjiu. If you want to know, have my senior brother come see me. Hee hee. Fengjiu chuckled. He played with the black hair that fell in front of his chest. His gentle voice carried a bit of carelessness and ridicule. Miss Yun's family has truly opened my eyes. To be honest, I have never seen a girl like Miss Yun. Leng Shuang poured a cup of tea for Fengjiu. After Fengjiu received it, he gently scraped the tea and took a sip. He then played with the tea in his hand and said to Leng Shuang, Miss Yun's injuries should be changed. Yes. Leng Shuang responded and went forward to change the medicine for Yun Xuexin's injuries. Fengjiu did not say anything else. He only used the tea lid to play with the tea and sat there with his eyes closed. No one knew what he was thinking. On the bed, Yun Xuexin allowed Leng Shuang to change the medicine for her and did not say anything else. As time passed, Leng Shuang changed the medicine for Yun Xuexin's injuries. He then returned to Fengjiu's side, Master, it's done. N. Fengjiu's injuries. Yun Xuexin's injuries. Last night, I had someone feed you an inner core. I. You want to see results with just an inner core? Ghost doctor, you think too highly of your pills. Yun Xuexin said slowly. Her expression was indifferent and she did not look at her. Fengjiu nodded when he heard this. That's true. You need an inner core a day to heal your internal injuries. Otherwise, you'll have problems in the future. As she spoke, she turned her palm and a bottle appeared in her hand. Since you're Mosa's junior sister, I'll take advantage of you. As she spoke, she handed the bottle in her hand to Leng Shuang. Leng Shuang stepped forward and took the pill. He brought it to Yun Xuexin and said in a cold voice, Miss Yun, please open your mouth. Yun Xuexin frowned and stared at the pill. What kind of pill is this? Why does it smell so strange? Chapter 2790. She took a sip of tea and said slowly, if anything happens to you while you're in my hands, I won't be able to explain it to your senior brother. Don't you think so? Moreover, who am I? I'm the ghost doctor. How can the pills I refine be the same as those refined by other pill masters? If I really wanted to harm you, I wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. Hearing this, Yun Xuexin's eyes flashed slightly. She glanced at Fengjiu and perhaps felt that what Fengjiu said made sense. Hence, she glanced at the pill before opening her mouth slightly and swallowing it. Seeing this, Fengjiu's smile deepened. That's right. She did not leave. Instead, she passed the teacup to Leng Shuang and sat there looking at Yun Xuexin who was lying on the bed. Why aren't you leaving? Yun Xuexin frowned at her. The medicine had been changed and she had taken the inner pill. Why was she still sitting there? Fengjiu smiled. No rush, no rush. I have to see the effects of the medicine. Hearing this, Yun Xuexin ignored her and closed her eyes to rest. Miss Yun is going to sleep. Didn't you just wake up? It's not good to sleep too much. Fengjiu looked at Yun Xuexin's frown because of her words and couldn't help but smile. Since Miss Yun wants to close your eyes and rest, that's good. Perhaps Miss Yun will remember who attacked you later. Hearing this, Yun Xuexin opened her eyes. Her gaze was fierce. Fengjiu. What are you trying to do? Because of this fierce shout, her internal injuries were in pain. For a moment, beads of cold sweat appeared on her forehead and her face became as pale as paper. Seeing this, Fengjiu reached out and pressed her acupoints, saying, Miss Yun, you're injured. It's really not suitable for you to be so angry. Also, you can't move recklessly. Otherwise, if you move your broken ribs, you'll have to move them again. That's not only troublesome, but also very painful. With her acupoint pressed and her body unable to move, Yun Shuexin glared at Fengjiu. What are you trying to do? Quickly release my acupoint. No rush, no rush. Fengjiu shook his head, looked at her, and asked, Miss Yun, I have a few questions for you. After you answer my questions, I will naturally unseal your acupoints. She looked at her with narrowed eyes and a smile on her face. Does Miss Yun know the person who attacked you? Hearing her words, Yun Shuexin answered almost instinctively, yes. However, her expression changed when she spoke. She pursed her lips tightly and stared at Fengjiu with a cold and stern gaze. However, she didn't speak again. It was as if she was afraid that the moment she spoke, she wouldn't be able to control her words. Hearing her words, Fengjiu's smile deepened. So you know each other. Then, is the person who attacked you your enemy? Large beads of cold sweat slid down Yun Shuexin's forehead. Her face was as pale as paper, as if she would faint at any time. She did not speak. She clenched her teeth tightly and pursed her lips. She stared fiercely at Fengjiu as if she wanted to skin her alive. Fengjiu did not care. He only lowered his voice and asked again, Miss Yun, is the person who attacked you your enemy? Chapter 2791. Upon hearing this, Fengjiu's eyes flickered, and the smile on her face gradually faded. She looked at Yun Shuexin, who was lying stiffly on the bed with a pale and weak face as she resisted the effects of the medicine. She continued to ask, then, was it an accident that you were attacked and injured? Or did you arrange it? When she asked this, she saw that Yun Shuexin had bitten her lips so hard that they were bleeding. Fengjiu curled her lips into a cold smile. Miss Yun, don't try to resist the truest reaction in your heart. Come, tell me, was it an accident that you were attacked and injured? Or did you arrange it? Yes, I arranged it. Fengjiu. What did you do to me? Her voice was stiff and trembling. She bit her lips so hard that they were bleeding. Blood dyed her lips red, and it made her pale face look even more conspicuous. When the question came out, it gradually sounded weak and powerless. She tried to resist the words that rushed out of her mouth, but it exhausted her original physical strength. It was as if her entire body had been drained of energy. TSK. Fengjiu stared at her and clicked her tongue. I didn't expect it. You're actually so cruel to yourself. When Mose told me about his suspicions, I didn't believe it. I didn't expect it to be true. I really didn't expect it. Her words made Yun Shuexin's heart even more shocked and upset. She looked at Fengjiu and bit her lips. She wanted to ask a few questions, but she couldn't. Senior brother suspected her. She had done so well and flawlessly, yet senior brother still doubted her. Why? Why did he suspect her? If Fengjiu hadn't done something to her, no one would have known what she had done. But why did senior brother suspect her? You're not a stupid person, so how did you come up with this idea? Don't tell me you think that Mose will take pity on you because you're injured. Fengjiu sneered. She stood up and crossed her arms as she looked at Yun Shuexin, who was lying on the bed, unable to move. She said, I don't like scheming people. Although you are injured, since this is the result of your own actions, you can't blame me. There's something wrong with that pill of yours. She gritted her teeth and said hatefully. Nonsense, do you think I'll let you eat it if there's no problem? Do you think just anyone can eat my pills? She gave a cold snort and looked down at her. Hearing this, Yun Shuexin gritted her teeth in anger. Fengjiu. How dare he treat her like this? What? Not convinced? Fengjiu sneered, it's useless to be unconvinced. Whether it's playing dirty or playing fair, you can't beat me. Fengjiu retracted her gaze and looked at Ling Shuang, stay here and watch over her. I'll ask Ling Hua to arrange for this woman to be sent out of the residence. If it was an accident, it would be one thing, but since it was her own arrangement, then don't blame her for giving her a taste of her own medicine. Yes. Leng Xuan replied and was about to send Fengjiu out when he heard Yun Shuexin's voice behind him. Do you think my senior brother will believe what you said? Fengjiu, who was about to leave, stopped in her tracks. She didn't walk back, but stood there and looked at her, waiting for her to continue. Men are all sentimental, especially an outstanding woman like me. Do you think my senior brother will let you chase me out? Do you think my senior brother will believe what I said just now? Yun Shuexin coldly stared at her, trying to sow discord. Chapter 2792. Hearing this, Fengjiu looked at her with a smile that was not a smile. You really are narcissistic. It's just that you don't understand my man, and you don't understand me. As soon as she finished speaking, she couldn't be bothered to look at her anymore. Instead, she walked out and said to Leng Hua, find a courtyard for her and send her there. Yes. Inside the room, Yun Shuexin heard the voice outside and angrily gritted her teeth. She had been too arrogant. If she knew that Fengjiu had that kind of abnormal pill, she definitely would not have done something like trying to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice used to lure it. Leng Hua was very efficient. Before noon, a courtyard had been found. After obtaining Fengjiu's approval, he took Yun Shuexin out of the Feng manor and moved her to a courtyard outside. Fengjiu only told his subordinates to look after her and did not pay any more attention to him. It was not until evening when Xianyuan Mo's returned that Fengjiu told him about this matter. That's why I used the truth pill to ask her everything. Fengjiu shrugged, I never thought that this junior sister of yours would be so cruel to herself. If it were me, I wouldn't be able to do it to myself. Hearing her words, Xianyuan Mo's expression became a bit ugly. He was silent for a while before saying, after her injuries have healed, I'll tell her to go back. Alright, let's not talk about her anymore. That injury will take at most 10 days to half a month to recover. Fengjiu said this. He looked at her and asked, when do we plan on going back? Are we going to your father's place first? Or are we going to my grandfather's place? As she said this, she thought for a bit and said, my brother and the others have already gone back for a while. I don't know when they plan on coming back. If we want to go back, we'll probably have to bring it back a bit earlier. You should also take care of the matters here. Quickly take care of them and then we can leave. Xianyuan Mo said. The two of them were talking and discussing matters. That night, in the small courtyard outside where Yun Shuexin was staying, a figure avoided the two guards sent by Fengjiu and entered the room as if there was no one else present. Have you been seen through? A figure came into her room and asked Yun Shuexin, who was lying on the bed. He was wearing a black cloak and a mask, so his figure and face could not be seen. Hearing the voice, Yun Shuexin, who was sleeping on the bed, opened her eyes and looked sideways at the person. She frowned and was a little displeased. Why are you here? I'm here to tell you not to forget about business. But looking at you now, it seems that you can't even get close to Fengjiu, let alone find a chance to do it. The black-robed man's voice turned cold as he stared at her coldly. I've already warned you not to waste your time on other things. If you don't do it, you'll be punished when you return. I didn't expect her to come back so suddenly. Her sudden appearance disrupted my plan, Yun Shuexin said coldly. Plan? Ha! The man sneered, Master didn't send you to seduce Xianyuan Mo's. Hearing the word seduce, Yun Shuexin's face turned from white to red, then from red to green and white. She was the proud daughter of a noble family. How could she be associated with the word seduce? I didn't seduce Senior. She gritted her teeth and said. Chapter 2793. Enough. Yun Shuexin shouted angrily. This shout caused her internal injuries to hurt. At the same time, the people guarding the small courtyard heard the noise and quickly rushed over. Hearing the noise outside, the man shook his head and was very disappointed. You really can't compare to Fengjiu. As soon as he finished speaking, the two guards outside rushed in. His black robes fluttered and a black aura filled the air. His entire person disappeared from the room. Who goes there? The guards' shouts rang out in the room. However, when they came in, they only saw Yun Shuexin on the bed. They glanced at her, then looked away and vigilantly looked around. Get out! Yun Shuexin endured the pain from her internal injuries and threw the pillow at them. Seeing this, the two guards retreated. When they were outside, one of them lowered his voice and said, "You stay here and keep watch. I'll go back and report to Master." Although they did not see anyone, they were certain that there was someone in the room. When the guards returned to the Feng Manor and told Fengjiu what had happened, Fengjiu smiled, "You two can come back tomorrow. I'll have Leng Hua arrange for 2 servant girls to go over." "Yes, sir." The guard replied and retreated. After the guards left, Xianyuan Mose asked from inside the room, "Are we letting her do as she pleases?" "Let her do as she pleases. Either way, we're preparing to leave. We'll just let her recover there." As Fengjiu spoke, he patted his head in annoyance. "I shouldn't have only asked those few questions. I made a mistake, I made a mistake." As night fell, the two of them prepared to rest. In the next few days, the two of them busied themselves with their own matters. Because of this, they completely forgot about Yun Shuexin, who was recovering in the courtyard. Yun Shuexin waited in the courtyard for a few days. Seeing that Fengjiu did not come again, and even her senior did not appear, she could not help but feel disheartened. As her injuries gradually healed, she could barely get out of bed and walk around. She thought that she should go to the Feng Manor again. However, on this night, 3 people came. "Master wants you to go back. It's not suitable for you to get involved in this matter." The cloaked man spoke in a deep voice. His cold eyes stared at Yun Shuexin, who was leaning against the headboard of the bed. He ignored her pale face and gestured with his hand. The 2 men in black behind him walked forward and helped her up from the bed. "I can't leave like this, She tried to say something, but before she could finish speaking, she was interrupted. "You should know that no one can change Master's decision. If he wants you to go back, then you have to go back." The man said coldly, looking at her with contempt, "What's more, I've never thought that a woman can do anything. In this world, there is only one ghost, Dr. Fengjiu, you can't compare to her. Shuexin, Yun Shuexin's, Yun Shuexin, Yun Shuexin's. How can I not be compared to Fengjiu? That woman was just a woman who came from an unknown place. How can you be compared to me, Yun Shuexin?" Chapter 2794. The man's cold voice sounded in the room and entered Yun Shuexin's ears. She pursed her lips and did not speak again, allowing the 2 black-clothed men to help her up. "How do you plan to deal with Fengjiu next?" Yun Shuexin asked. "That's not something you should ask." The man coldly glanced at her and reached out to lift her chin. Looking at her pale face, he said, "What you should do right now is to nurse your body back to health. Master has another task for you." Yun Shuexin turned her face slightly and broke free from his touch. She coldly said, "My senior apprentice brother is an Empyrean god. His battle prowess is unfathomable. If you want to deal with Fengjiu, you must first lure him away. Otherwise, no matter how many people you have, if the 2 of them work together, you will not be able to take down Fengjiu. Do I need you to teach me how to do things? You should take care of yourself first." The man's eyes narrowed and a cold light flashed through them. He signaled with his eyes and the 2 men took her away. After the man swept his gaze over the small courtyard, he also turned and left. The next day, when the servant came in to serve, she discovered that Yun Shuexin had disappeared. Thus, she hurried back to the Feng Manor to report. "What? She disappeared?" Fengjiu raised an eyebrow and looked at the servant who had her head lowered. Yes, yes. This servant went in this morning to help Miss Yun wash up, but I discovered that Miss Yun had disappeared. This servant failed in her duty and did not take good care of Miss Yun. Master, please punish me. The servant's voice trembled and her heart was panicking. She still lowered her head and knelt in front of Fengjiu. Hearing this, Fengjiu waved his hand, that's enough. You may rise. As he spoke, he said, come with me to take a look. He left the Feng Manor and went to the small courtyard. When he arrived at the small courtyard, he entered Yun Xuexin's room to take a look. He saw that there were no signs of a struggle in the room. Everything was neatly arranged. However, the blankets on the bed had been lifted and were not folded properly. Thus, he looked at the servant behind him and asked, has this room been tidied up? Replying to master, it hasn't. This servant discovered that Miss Yun had disappeared and quickly returned to the manor to report. This place has not been touched. Fengjiu nodded and waved his hand, I understand. You may return to the Feng Manor. There is no need to keep watch here. After the servant girl acknowledged her words and retreated, she walked forward and stood beside the bed. It was unknown what she was thinking, but after a long time, she walked outside. Xianyuan Mose was in the middle of instructing his subordinates about the handover when he heard Ing Yi say that Fengjiu had arrived. Thus, he sent his subordinates back first and went outside himself. Is there something you need from me? He sat down in the courtyard outside and signaled the guard to pour 2 cups of tea. I came to tell you that your junior sister ran away. As Fengjiu spoke, she sat down at the table and looked at Xianyuan Mose with both hands supporting her chin with SS. She can leave on her own. I just went to the small courtyard to take a look. She was probably taken away by someone. It should be the person who injured her. Right now, there are no signs of a struggle. So the person who took her away should be someone she knows. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose nodded, it's good that she left. Originally, I wanted her to leave. Now that she has left on her own, at least it won't be so ugly. Chapter 2795. I'll go with you. I'm almost done with the things I have on hand, Xianyuan Mose said as he stood up and looked at her. Seeing this, Fengjiu said, that's fine too. Thus, he asked someone to prepare a carriage, and the 2 of them sat in the carriage and went to the Heavenly Pill building. When they reached the building, Fengjiu asked Leng Hua and Du Fan to call the Phoenix Guards and the manager of the building to the backyard. Seeing more than 10 people gathered together, Fengjiu stretched out his hand and set up a soundproof barrier in the courtyard. When they saw that their master had set up a soundproof barrier here, everyone was a little surprised. They thought, could it be that something big had happened? I want to tell you that Mose and I plan to go to Penglai Immortal Island's Immortal Ascension Ladder after some time. There's a door of light on the Immortal Ascension Ladder that leads to another world. We're going there to improve our strength, so we're going to bring some people with us. Hearing their master's words, more than 10 people couldn't help but feel nervous. Would their master bring them there? For a moment, their hearts beat fiercely, and they were so nervous that their palms were sweating. We can't bring too many people there, so I only plan to choose 8 people to go with me. Seeing how they were holding their breaths, Fengjiu continued, actually, you don't have to think that going there is a good thing. The people there are stronger. When you go there, you have to start all over again. You have to be careful in everything. Master, we're not afraid. Master, take me there. Master, I'm not afraid either. Master, please take me there too. Master. They all scrambled to be the first to speak, afraid that they would be left behind. Although it was not bad for them to be here, they wanted to follow their master to gain experience and grow together. However, they also knew that even if they wanted to go, not everyone could go. Since master said these words, he must already have a candidate in mind. At this moment, they couldn't help but envy the 8 people who were chosen by Master. However, there were so many of them, yet Master only planned to bring 8 people. It could be imagined how many of them would be chosen. Fengjiu looked at them, his clear and unhurried voice sounding out. These 8 people are Luo Yu, Fan Lin, Gu Mo, Wei Feng, Ling Shuang, Ling Hua, Du Fan, and Bai Qingcheng. When they heard the first 7 people, they were not surprised. However, when they heard Bai Qingcheng's name, they could not help but look at their master in astonishment. One of them asked with hesitation and confusion, "Master, the first 7 people have been following you for a long time. We don't have any objections if you bring them along. However, why do you want to bring Bai Qingcheng along?" Bai Qingcheng was the most inconspicuous among them. She was also the most ordinary. Aside from her outstanding appearance, there was nothing else about her that was memorable. Especially since she had once had designs on Master. However, why would Master want to bring her along? Today, Bai Qingcheng was not here. Instead, she was in the foam manor. Everyone was even more confused. Hearing this, Fengjiu only smiled slightly. Although she has been by my side for the shortest time and her strength is the most inconspicuous among you, she has her own uniqueness. This time, I'm only giving her an opportunity. Chapter 2796. Hearing her words, everyone fell silent. They also knew that it would not be easy for their master to go there. Naturally, it was impossible for her to bring all of them. Even the 8 captains of the Phoenix Guards only brought 4 people. It was obvious that the rest of them did not stand a chance. I will tell Ling Hua and Du Fan about the other matters later. You can all leave. The 8 of you stay. Fengjiu looked at the 8 captains of the Phoenix Guards and said. Seeing this, the 8 of them stayed. After the others left, Fengjiu looked at the 4 people she had left behind and said, "Among the 8 of you, I have chosen Luo Yu and the other 3 to come with me. The 4 of you will stay here. The task on your shoulders is not easy." She paused and said, "The few of you are more mature and you are familiar with everything about the Phoenix Guards. Therefore, I can't bring all of you with me. If I bring all of you with me, I will not be at ease here. Do you understand?" The 8 of them had followed her all the way here. Now, she had only chosen 4 of them to follow her to Penglai Island. She was worried that they would think that she did not choose them because she did not think they were good enough. Therefore, she could only tell them frankly. "Master, we understand. Even if you leave, there must be someone to look after this place. Whether it is the Phoenix Guards or the forces of the Tianyuan Palace, only they know best and know how to operate. Master, don't worry. The 4 of us will shoulder the original responsibilities of Luo Yu and the other 3. We will take care of this place so that Master will not have any worries." Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled and said, "Very good." She nodded and took out a map that she had drawn for them. She said, "This is the route that I drew to the Penglai Immortal Island, as well as the things that you need to pay attention to along the way. This is the route that I have taken. Pay extra attention to the places that I have marked. There are also some connections that I am familiar with in the Penglai Immortal Island." She looked at them and said, "I don't know when I will be back. Therefore, keep these things. In the future, you can try to climb the stairway of immortality. I have also explained the things to pay attention to on the stairway of immortality. Take it and read it carefully." "Thank you, Master." The 4 of them replied and took the things. Fengjiu looked at the other 4 and said, "Luo Yu and the others, quickly finish the tasks with the 4 of them. After these 2 days, we have to make a trip back." "Yes." The 4 of them replied. Only then did they bow and leave with the rest of the group. After they left, Xianyuan Mose who was sitting at the side. "It's enough. It's not appropriate to bring too many people over." She waved her hand to remove the soundproof barrier and walked to the table to sit down. To be honest, whether it's the 8 Phoenix Guard captains or the others, they've all been with me for a long time. It's really something that I've thought about over and over again. Chapter 2797. What about your brother and the others? Aren't you going to bring them along? Xianyuan Mose asked. If she didn't bring them along, with Guan Xilin's strength, he probably wouldn't be able to climb the immortal ascension stairs and enter the profound light sect within 5 years. Fengjiu sighed softly. I've thought about it before, but I think it's better to let him increase his strength first. I hope that he can climb the immortal ascension stairs on his own. If he can climb it with his own strength, I think he'll have a better chance of surviving there. As for Mo Chen, I think that if he knows about our plans, he'll probably go with us. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose said without thinking, he's Tianji Elder's disciple, so it's better for him to stay here. Furthermore, he has an otherworldly aura, so what can he do even if he goes over there? I haven't told him about this yet, so it's up to him whether he goes or not. As soon as she finished speaking, she stood up. Let's go home. Let's go back and play with Hao. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose's lips curled up slightly. Okay. He stood up and held her hand as they walked out. Outside, the carriage was already prepared. Just as Fengjiu was about to get on the carriage, a group of more than 20 people suddenly appeared in the sky. They were flying on swords, holding bows and arrows in their hands, and there was a burning flame at the tip of the arrows. As these people approached Fengjiu and the Heavenly Pill building, their spiritual energy surged. At the same time, one group of the 20 people went in the other direction, while the other group went in the other direction. When they released the arrows in their hands, several arrows flew out with a whoosh. Just as they were about to shoot into the Heavenly Pill building, a protective shield formed by spiritual energy instantly appeared in the Heavenly Pill building. The flaming arrows were bounced away by the protective shield formed by spiritual energy, blocking them outside the building. At the same time, the cultivators in the building rushed out, surrounding the Heavenly Pill building to protect them. Fengjiu finally felt at ease when she witnessed this scene. She gazed at the group that had arrived on their swords, and she noticed that a group of people had split off from the group and headed towards another direction. She couldn't help but feel slightly worried when she saw this. Those people seemed to be heading towards the manor. Hao is still at home. I have to go back and take a look. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose looked at those people and said to her, I'll go back with you. But this place. She looked at the Heavenly Pill building with some hesitation. Don't worry, they can protect him. Xianyuan Mose said in a deep voice, if you can't protect them, how can you be at ease and let them protect the Heavenly Dan building? Let them try. Hearing this, Fengjiu nodded. He turned around and instructed Lang Hua and the others, eliminate the enemy. Protect the Heavenly Dan building well. Yes. Everyone responded. She and the Yama Lord stood up together and quickly headed in the direction of the Foam Manor. After seeing them leave, the hidden guards in the Heavenly Dan building in the powerhouses in the building turned from defense to offense. They surrounded the dozen or so people in the air and launched a series of attacks. In a corner of the street, Hui Lang, who heard that something had happened in the Heavenly Dan building, was squatting at the corner of the street. When he heard the people on the street rushing to inform him, he immediately leaped up and had the hidden guards release his sealed spiritual energy. He then quickly rushed to the Heavenly Dan building. The two of them arrived at the Heavenly Dan building together. After seeing the situation, they quickly joined the battle. Chapter 2798. Compared to the black-clothed people on the Heavenly Pill building side, aside from the black-clothed people on their swords, there was another group waiting here. The two groups of black-clothed people added up to around 30 people, and they were currently attacking the people inside the Foam Manor. Among them, there were several people at the peak of the Celestial Sage Realm, and there were even 2 at the Celestial Venerable Realm. The hidden guards and guards in the manor were not their opponents, and could only defend to the death. A few of them were protecting Ling Shuang, who was carrying a child. Their bodies were covered in blood, but they did not retreat a single step. Bai Qingcheng was also among them. Her white clothes were stained with blood, and it was very eye-catching. Her face was covered in frost, and the spiritual energy on her body surged. With a wave of her sleeve, several contracted beasts rushed out, heading downwards. Roar! Roar! Master! It's Master! When the people guarding saw her return, it was as if their pillar of support had returned. They could not help but relax, and their fighting spirit became even stronger as they shouted, "Kill!" The sound of swords clashing could be heard clearly. Even if they knew that their strength was not their opponents, they still fought with all their strength. At this time, Xianyuan Mose had already killed a few celestial sage cultivators. The strength of celestial gods was very strong. They could have used their pressure to make the people below fall to the ground, but that would also hurt their people. Thus, Xianyuan Mose could only kill them one by one. The hidden guards of the Feng Manor were not the opponents of the celestial venerables, and those people were naturally not the opponents of Fengjiu and Xianyuan Mose. Moreover, with the help of a few divine beasts below, the situation gradually reversed. However, one of the celestial venerable cultivators who was fighting with Fengjiu stared at Fengjiu and shouted, "Fengjiu! Obediently hand over the ancient green lotus. Otherwise, more people will die because of you. Is that so? Then before that, I will first kill all of you." She used her hand as a sword, and her qi as a blade. Her spiritual energy turned into a sharp blade between her fingers. Streams of qi attacked the cultivator at an extremely fast speed, causing wounds to appear on the body of the celestial venerable cultivator. The celestial venerable retreated step by step while trying to avoid her attack. However, because his dodging speed was not fast enough, he fell from the sky and fell to the ground. Seeing Fengjiu chasing after him, he tried to escape. "You can't escape." Fengjiu's eyes narrowed, and killing intent flashed in his eyes. The celestial venerable cultivator who was trying to escape on the ground. To the celestial venerable cultivator who was trying to escape on the ground, and leaped to the sky. Trying to run. She was in the air. She reached celestial venerable cultivator S and reached celestial venerable cultivator. She reached out her hand reached and reached, she reached and reached cultivator's venerable cultivator, and reached, she reached, and reached, she cultivators her she reached him, and she cultivator. She, cultivator, and, cultivator, she. Was. Of course. Cultivator, ceiling, and cultivator venerable, ceilings she realm, s cultivators. Bees she reach, she. Fengjiu. The sound of bones breaking was drowned out by the powerful pressure. The cultivator in her hand lost his life force, but just as she was about to loosen her grip, a black aura wrapped around her wrist and pulled her up abruptly. Jiu. Xianyuan Mose saw that the situation was not right, and was shocked. He quickly gathered his qi from Ling Shuang, who was holding the child, and quickly rushed to Fengjiu's location. Chapter 2799. When the Yama Lord became angry, it was truly like hell on earth. Even the cultivators who had crawled out of piles of corpses could not help but shiver at the scene before them. Not far away, the white-clothed Mo Chen stood under a tree. His gaze returned from the sky and landed on the bloody street. His gaze only flashed for a moment. He never thought that Fengjiu would be taken to some unknown place after returning. The transportation formation that appeared in the sky could not be opened by a normal person. Also, the black aura that bound Fengjiu. It seemed that he had been taken away by the person with the black lotus of annihilation. At this moment, he could not help but be a bit worried. Would she be able to escape from the clutches of those people? After the black-clothed people were killed and Fengjiu was sucked away by the black hole, the people of the Feng Manor stopped outside for a moment and had some people clean up the corpses outside. They also had some injured people enter the manor to have their wounds bandaged. Xianyuan Mose walked into the Feng Manor with a cold expression on his face. Behind him, the silver wolf whimpered and looked at the sky, feeling wronged. In the end, it turned around and walked into the manor. If its master had contracted it, it would have been able to enter the contracted beast space. Now, Tun Yun and Old White had entered the space and were at its master's side. Only it remained here. Inside the Feng Manor, Xianyuan Mose sat in the main hall. Because Fengjiu had been sucked away by the transportation formation, his mood was gloomy. This caused everyone in the manor to feel oppressed. The atmosphere in the manor was so heavy that it made it hard for people to breathe. "Yama Lord, young Master Mo Chen has come," the guard outside said, and a white figure slowly walked in from outside. At this moment, Xianyuan Mose was still blaming himself. That feeling of helplessness was so uncomfortable, especially when he could only watch helplessly as Fengjiu was sucked into the transportation array and disappeared before his eyes. He didn't dare to imagine what would happen to him if something happened to her. A transportation black hole that appeared out of nowhere, and there was also the Black Lotus of Annihilation. Even if you had pulled her back at the time, you would have definitely been sucked in. He looked at Xianyuan Mose's slightly red eyes and said, "That suction force isn't here. It's on the other side of the black hole. That's why it can't be stopped." Xianyuan Mose nodded and said, "That suction force isn't here. It's on the other side of the black hole. Just because she is the star of the Phoenix, she has experienced so much more hardship than others." Xianyuan Mose's voice was low and hoarse. Mo Chen slowly walked into the hall and sat down. She said warmly, "In this world, who hasn't experienced hardship? Some people are constantly facing small difficulties, but they are not fatal. Others, on the other hand, are facing a great disaster and have no way to survive." Although Fengjiu has experienced a lot of hardships, every time she went through a trial, even if it was a narrow escape from death, she would still improve. She was originally extraordinary, the path she walked would naturally be different from others. His voice was gentle, as if he was not worried or nervous. He looked at Xianyuan Mose and asked, "What do you plan to do next?" When he had arrived, he had heard what she had said to Xianyuan Mose. However, he did not know what she meant. Chapter 2800. Hearing this, Mo Chen looked at him and said, "She asked you to carry on with your business. I'm going to find her and bring her back." Xianyuan Mose said, a dim light flashing through his eyes. He knew that she wanted him to carry out their previous agreement, but he was not at ease, especially since it was overseas. He was even more worried about leaving her alone in such a strange place. Hearing this, Mo Chen paused for a moment and asked, "When are you leaving?" "I'll go with you." Xianyuan Mose glanced at him and said calmly, "No need." Mo Chen smiled warmly and said, "If you want to go, I think it's necessary, unless you don't want to go." "Master, Master." Hui Lang's voice came from outside. Not long after, Hui Lang, who was dressed as a beggar, ran in and said, "Master, I heard that the ghost doctor, young Master Mo Chen. You're here too." Seeing Mo Chen, Hui Lang was stunned. "Hui Lang, what mistake did you make this time? Why are you dressed as a beggar?" Mo Chen looked at him and smiled. I'm training outside." Hui Lang scratched his head and said embarrassedly. Seeing his master's tense face, he quickly straightened his back and said, "Master, there are no casualties in the Heavenly Pill building. Lang Hua and Du Fan have returned and went to check on the casualties in the manor. You may leave." Xianyuan Mose said and waved his hand, indicating for him to leave. "Yes." Grey Wolf responded and planned to go down and change his clothes before coming back. He bowed and retreated. Xianyuan Mose was silent for a moment and asked in a low voice, Feng Jiu has fallen into the hands of those people. What's the worst that could happen? His body tensed up. Even though he didn't want to think about the worst, he couldn't help but hear a glimmer of hope from Mo Chen's words. After Mo Chen heard this, he did not say anything for a while. After a while, he said, "Actually, I don't agree with you going to find her. You should know that Feng Jiu has an Aurora teleportation scroll. She can escape from those people as long as she finds an opportunity. If we go, it will be unnecessary." He looked deeply at Xianyuan Mose, who was frowning, and said, "Moreover, you should believe in her. With her ability and wisdom, I feel that even if she is in danger, she will definitely be able to turn the situation around." Hearing his words, Xianyuan Mose took a deep breath and leaned back in his seat. He gradually calmed down and knew that Feng Jiu meant the same thing. However, he was still a little worried about letting her face such a situation alone. The servant girl came in and served them tea. Then, she lowered her head and quietly left. "You guys are going to Penglai Immortal Island to climb the immortal stairs. I have to find time to go back and tell my master," Mo Chen said as she took a sip of tea. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose's eyelids twitched. He glanced at him and said, "I didn't ask you to go with us." "Yes. You didn't ask me to go with you, but I have to go," Mo Chen said unhurriedly. He used the lid to gently scrape the tea leaves on the teacup and said, "My master has long ordered me to follow Feng Jiu. However, I am ashamed to say that I have not been able to complete this task well. I have let my master down." Chapter 28:01. Mo Chen smiled and took a sip of tea before saying, "It's all right. You do what you need to do. I still have to go to Ling Shuang's place to see the child." Seeing this, Xianyuan Mose also stood up and walked out without saying anything else. Mo Chen sat in the hall for a while and drank a cup of tea. Only then did she walk out, intending to see that child. At this time, they did not know that after Feng Jiu was sucked into the teleportation formation, a flame ignited on her hand and forced the dark qi that was coiling around her hand to retreat. However, at this time, her body had already fallen out of the black hole. Just as she was about to fall into the formation that was surging with powerful spiritual energy, she looked down and saw many powerful cultivators wearing black cloaks waiting for her below. Among them, there was also a person wearing a black lotus mask who was sitting on a chair. The moment she fell, the black-clothed man who was sucked into the black hole with her reached out to grab her and pull her down. Seeing this, she moved her palm and the Qin Feng sword instantly appeared in her hand. Sword shadow green light. She shouted and the Qin Feng sword in her hand shot out a green and dazzling light. She attacked the black-clothed man with a murderous aura. It was so fast that it could be said to be the speed of light. The black-clothed man, who was quite powerful, could not dodge in time and was hit by the sword. Whoosh! Hiss! The sharp and terrifying sword chi broke through the shield that the black-clothed man had quickly condensed to block the attack. With a loud bang, the mask on the black-clothed man's face was split open by the Qin Feng sword, revealing his true face under the mask. It was the face of a man in his 30s. There was a sinister look on his face. His slender eyes were wide open in shock, as if he could not believe the scene in front of him. When he was hit, he froze. He could not dodge or escape. Even though he was an immortal venerable, he could not withstand the attack of a heavenly god expert and the ancient divine weapon in his hand. A trace of blood seeped out from his forehead and slowly slid down. Subsequently, his entire body split into two and fell to the ground with a bang, and it shocked all the black-clothed men who were about to capture Feng Jiu. "Master of the Black Lotus, this is a greeting gift from me, Feng Jiu. We'll meet again." While the crowd below was still in shock, they suddenly heard Feng Jiu's cold and arrogant voice. Just as they were wondering what she meant by this, they saw her swinging the green-edged longsword in her hand around as she descended. Streaks of sword energy shot out, forming a sword shield. Immediately after, a wave of flames shot out with a whoosh. For a moment, no one could see her figure. It was also at this moment that the crowd below clearly sensed the faint aura of a formation within the barrier formed by the flames and sword chi. However, the aura of the formation only flashed for a moment. If one didn't pay close attention, it would be impossible to detect it. However, the black-clothed cultivators soon realized that something was wrong because they could not see Fengjiu's figure. The ball of flame and sword energy seemed to have stopped in midair and gradually dissipated. Something's wrong. Something's wrong. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.